Well, good Wednesday afternoon and welcome to 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you from 3 until 6 this afternoon with a full show and a full slate to get to. Super Bowl 57 now mere days away. We are 4 days, in fact, from the Super Bowl. 4 days? My math right there? Yeah, the 12th. 4 days away from the Super Bowl. We'll look to one of the things that maybe we haven't talked enough about, which is kind of ridiculous given who is playing for the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, specifically who their starting quarterback is. I saw something today on Twitter that felt like a troll post from a guy who covers the Eagles and, as far as I'm aware, has a bit of a reputation with that fan base for being a little trolly. But it actually enlightened me to making my official Super Bowl prediction. I don't know what my score pick is going to be, but I've made my decision official. And I flipped who I am picking to win Super Bowl 57. We're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment. I think you're going to like where my most recent result is. So we'll get to that here in just a moment, talking about the Super Bowl and Patrick Mahomes. Also this hour, we've got our Wendy's Male High School Athlete of the Week, Jackson Thomas from Seaman Wrestling, 40-4 on the year. He had 2 pins in an event this past week, Dan, that took a grand total of 1 minute and 35 seconds. 2 wins. 1 minute, 35 seconds.
Hey, get out. That's a little thing called efficiency.
2 pins in under a minute. So we'll talk to Jackson coming up later on this hour. Plenty of college basketball to get to today. K-State trounced TCU last night. We were both there. Dan had to work. I just got to enjoy the game. And it was an extremely enjoyable game for K-State. A game I would argue K-State should have won by more. And they won by plenty.
Yeah. It's funny how that kind of worked out, right? Like at the end of the game, I was left thinking, the 21-point margin kind of flatters Kansas State a little bit because they had ample opportunity to put TCU away and never really did. But also, the 21-point loss is about what TCU deserved because they never seriously threatened in the second half, and they weren't really capable of mounting a serious threat because their best players hurt, and arguably their second best player was out there on one leg. So, yeah, it was kind of a funky one in terms of like the second half felt really strange. Like it never felt in doubt, but it never felt comfortable, at least until Tyke Green started hosting his own slam dunk contest in the final 4 minutes, sparked a 17-2 run to close it out.
Yeah, that was pretty sick. So we'll talk all about that game, get our thoughts on it. Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com is going to join us for this week's Azura Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up at the bottom of the 4 o'clock hour. We'll also look ahead to tonight's Big 12 action. We've got some best bets for college basketball to get to. Headlines, what is wrong with you, one gotta go. All of it is coming up this hour on 580 Sports Talk, and we'd love for you to participate as well on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429, and as well in the comment section on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is our channel. Dan, that post I was referencing from Twitter this morning, it was from Elliot Shore Parks, who covers the Eagles for 94 WIP Radio, 94WIP.com in Philadelphia. And he tweeted this, and I would love to get your opinion on this first. If you built the ideal QB from scratch, you'd build a QB closer to Jalen Hurts than Patrick Mahomes. That's just a fact looking at what matters in today's NFL. To analyze this, I am going to step away from thinking this guy is just trying to troll people the week of the Super Bowl. I'm curious, though, what do you think about that particular belief that the built-in-a-lab QB looks more like Jalen Hurts than it would like Patrick Mahomes right now?
I guess my follow-up question would be what matters in today's NFL, right? Like if he's saying that what matters in today's NFL is the reason that you'd build a quarterback closer to Jalen Hurts than Patrick Mahomes, what does this gentleman think matters? Or maybe a better question, what does this gentleman think matters that Jalen Hurts is better at doing than Patrick Mahomes is? Right? Because it can't be size. Like if it were one thing if Jalen Hurts were like 6 foot, like built like Josh Allen, right? Like if you want to say, oh, you'd build a quarterback look like Josh Allen because he's 6'5" and he can run and he can be physical on the run and he's fast. And that's more what is important, what matters in today's NFL than Patrick Mahomes being 6'2". Like, okay, maybe I'd listen to that argument for a little bit before I dismissed it out of hand, but Jalen Hurts is an inch shorter than Mahomes, and they both weigh 230. So that can't be it, right? What matters in today's NFL that Jalen Hurts is better at than Patrick Mahomes? Mobility? Is Hurts faster? Sure he is. Is he a better running quarterback? Absolutely. He's a weapon in the ground game. On the season, Jalen Hurts ended up rushing this year for 760 yards. That's back-to-back years. He's gone over 750 rushing yards. And in each of the last two 17-game seasons, he's only played in 15 of the 17 games. So in a full schedule, maybe Hurts goes over 800 yards. Probably he goes over 800 yards. And maybe even gets close to 900 yards as a quarterback. That's pretty damn impressive. And the yards per carry makes it valuable as well. I mean, he's averaging 5 yards a carry for his career. Is that what matters, though, in today's NFL? Is your quarterback has to be a running threat? Because the best running threat at quarterback in the league is Justin Fields. How good was that offense? How good was his team? So that can't be what matters most in the NFL. What matters in today's NFL can't be about that. What else is there about the quarterback spot? Like, Hurts better runner than Mahomes? Yeah, I give him that. Give him that 100%. Is there anything else that Jalen Hurts does better than Patrick Mahomes? Throws fewer interceptions? That's not really a stat that I think reflects accurately quarterback accuracy, for lack of a better way to put it. I don't think your interception number is a reflection necessarily of, oh, you're being reckless with the ball, or oh, you're not valuing possession, or you take too many risks, or whatever it is. But it is worth pointing out that Jalen Hurts only threw, I think it was 6 interceptions this year, and has yet to be picked off in 2 playoff games. Like, yeah, that matters. Only 1% of his passes has been intercepted. In his career, he's got a 44-19 touchdown to interception ratio. He's got good numbers all the way around. Like, Jalen Hurts is an outstanding player. And I think sometimes when we do comparisons, our tendency is to downgrade one of the players in the comparison for the sake of lifting the other one up. And I'm not interested in doing that with Jalen Hurts, the second team all-pro quarterback this year behind Patrick Mahomes, the guy who might have won the MVP if he'd stayed healthy, though I still think Mahomes would have won it had Hurts played all 17 games. Like, I'm not interested in downgrading Jalen Hurts or saying that he's not actually that good, or he's a product of his system, or he's a product of the talent around him. I don't think that's true at all. I've got a lot of regard for Jalen Hurts. I think it's fascinating how Hurts, since his Alabama days, seems to get a tick better every single year. He's just been on a steady upward incline of improvement ever since he was at Alabama, ever since he had to deal with being benched at Alabama in the national championship game. He's just worked at his craft, gotten better and better. Fumbles used to be an issue, really kind of haven't been for him in the NFL. They were an issue for him in college, an issue for him at Oklahoma. Haven't been an issue in the NFL. He just keeps getting better. So I come at this discussion with a great deal of admiration for Jalen Hurts. But that dude is not Patrick Mahomes. He's not. A show I like a lot. I don't watch a ton of talking head sports shows, but one I think is generally worth the time is on, I like the HBO shows like Real Sports with Bryant Gumbel. I think is really entertaining. Bomani Jones has a show on there called Game Theory. And he was talking about Mahomes in comparison to Joe Burrow, and the idea going into the AFC Championship game that if Mahomes lost, then Burrow had the quarterback championship belt. Then it was Burrow's league, that we had to say that Burrow was better than Patrick Mahomes. And I know Joe Burrow still has won 3 games to just 1 against Mahomes, but that doesn't make Joe Burrow a better quarterback than Patrick Mahomes. And what Jones said that really resonated with me on his TV show was, we have a tendency when there's one really great one to think, well, there's got to be another one around here somewhere we can compare him to. There's got to be another one we can pit him up against. And sometimes there just isn't. Like with Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods was the example that Bomani Jones used. We being the sports viewing public and certainly the sports media, to create a rival for Tiger Woods in his prime, whether it was David Duval or Phil Mickelson or Sergio Garcia, whoever it ended up being that year or that month. And there was no comparison because they weren't Tiger Woods. David Duval won a major. Phil Mickelson's a Hall of Famer. Sergio Garcia, well, he's Sergio. But none of those dudes are Tiger Woods. It didn't mean they were bad players or didn't deserve their accolades, didn't deserve their respect, didn't deserve the wins that they earned, the awards that they garnered, but they weren't Tiger Woods. Just because there's one doesn't mean there's another. And Patrick Mahomes is in that area where there's only one. It's just him. It's just Patrick Mahomes doing the things that Patrick Mahomes is doing right now. And arguably not even in his prime yet. Maybe just entering his prime at age 27. There is nobody else in the league doing what Patrick Mahomes is doing. Are there guys with stronger arms or as strong of an arm? I don't really think so. I'd take Mahomes' arm, although Josh Allen can sure let it rip. Justin Herbert's got a great arm. There's some great arms in the league. Are there guys who are faster, better runners, better scramblers than Patrick Mahomes? Yeah, sure. I would say that there are. Like, if I had to call a 3rd and 8 quarterback draw to get a first down, Mahomes is not my first choice. I'd probably pick Fields or Jalen Hurts if that was the play I had to call on 3rd and 8 to keep the drive moving. I don't know, in a race against humanity or something like that. Like, I understand that there are some things that Mahomes isn't the best at, but when you pull it all together and just talk about playing the position of quarterback, he's the best. And it's just him. There's nobody else who does all the things that he does as well as he does them on the level at which he has done them and on the level at which he has won. There just isn't. The baseball manager, Sparky Anderson, had a great line about this. Sparky Anderson, of course, he managed for many, many years, managed in Cincinnati and Detroit. He was the manager of the Big Red Machine, the most famous baseball teams of all time. Big Red Machine's catcher was Johnny Bench. Hall of Fame catcher, Johnny Bench. I got to meet Johnny Bench once in person down in Wichita. They used to give out a Collegiate Catcher of the Year award. It was named after Johnny Bench. It's not anymore. I think it's named after Buster Posey now, but it used to be named after Johnny Bench. So he would go down to Wichita and do a catching camp, and he'd give the award away, and he and somebody else would speak at the banquet, and it was the whole thing. Anyway, when I lived in Wichita, I got to meet Johnny Bench. And it's true what they say about his hands. Just gigantic hands. Just the biggest hands you've ever seen in your life. Anyway, Johnny Bench was the catcher in Major League Baseball in the late 60s and through the 70s. And if you're of that generation, you don't need me to tell you that it was Johnny Bench leagues ahead of everybody else, winning MVP awards, going to all-star games, winning Gold Gloves. He was the best hitter. He could throw. He was great defensively. He was the dude behind the plate. And invariably, because there's one, there must be another, right? There must be somebody we can pit against him. So people would try and compare Johnny Bench to his contemporaries, Carlton Fisk or Thurman Munson. And Sparky Anderson had a line when he said, don't insult any other catcher by comparing them to Johnny Bench. Because any other catcher you threw out there, even guys like Fisk, who's in the Hall of Fame, were going to pale in comparison to Johnny Bench. Mm-hmm. That's where Patrick Mahomes is. Don't insult any other quarterback by comparing him to Patrick Mahomes. There's just one of him.
The single most valuable asset in the history of the NFL, and I mean, that is not over the top. I, honest to God, mean the entire history of the NFL. The most valuable asset is Patrick Mahomes' arm. More than anything else. More than Barry Sanders' ability to cut. More than any individual player's speed. I would argue more so than the smarts of guys like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and the way they were able to just cerebrally pick you apart, the things they were able to do that led to so much success, and obviously all those Super Bowls for Tom Brady. The single most valuable asset in league history is the right arm of Patrick LeVon Mahomes II. There is no doubt in my mind about that. So already, if you are theoretically putting together this lab-grown quarterback and you're taking bits and pieces from all over the league and every quarterback you can find, every trait you could want. You're trying to put this unit together. Just by having that, you are already ahead of anything else that any other quarterback could bring to the table, including Jalen Hurts, who's a good player. He really is, and he is ascending. He is not done becoming what I think he could be. And that's a big change for me because I didn't think he was ever going to be this good or even close to it as an actual quarterback. He has become that. But when you factor in the running ability of Mahomes, and he's not a runner like Jalen Hurts is a runner or a Lamar Jackson or a Justin Fields or something like that. But I think anyone would tell you he is a functional runner, and the healthier his ankle gets for this game in particular, he's going to be just fine if needs be. He came up with the biggest run of the game in the AFC Championship on a bad ankle, a truly sprained ankle in that game, and he still made it work. So he's got the functional mobility. He's got the smarts too. We don't talk about that as much because he has the incredible physical characteristics, but he's got that. He's got the accuracy. He knows every defense in the NFL and can pick it apart. He's got all of that. So this post by Elliott Shore-Parks, I'm actually going to say this is useful for me because when I was looking at this today, I thought, you know what? I think maybe as a football consuming public, as a Super Bowl analyzing public, we may have gone too far with the analysis because we can talk all about, and we talked about it with Matt Verderame a couple of times each of the last 2 weeks about how big of a deal it is, Chiefs offensive line versus Eagles defensive line. And that's the biggest unit-to-unit matchup in the Super Bowl. And we've heard that from other places as well. Matt Derrick told us that on Friday as well. He thinks that's going to be a big matchup. And I would agree too. And we can talk about the Eagles secondary trying to defend the Chiefs receivers, especially if they've got a couple deep threats out there. Can the Chiefs young secondary limit a really good receiving core for the Eagles? What are the Chiefs going to do defensively against the running game of the Eagles? But here's, I think, where this game, what it boils down to for me. Super Bowl 55. The Chiefs, yes, they had the best quarterback. Tom Brady was great. The best, most talented quarterback in that game was Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs had one element of their team that was easily exploitable. It was a true fatal flaw. And we know that's true, and that's a literal thing, because it was their fatal blow in the Super Bowl. They could not protect. They couldn't block. They couldn't run. They were getting decimated up front. This game doesn't have that. Even if you think the Eagles' defensive line is better than the Chiefs' offensive line, it's not so overwhelming that you say that one thing alone is going to change the way this game is played. Even if you think the Chiefs' defensive line is worse than the Eagles' offensive line, that may be so. But that's not one single thing that is going to completely swing this game. So with everything, and I don't think there's any gap like that in this game, any element of the Chiefs' defense, Chiefs' offense, special teams for either squad, I don't think there's anything like that matchup-wise from one side of the line of scrimmage to the other. And if you're going to give me that even of a playing field, this comes down to the fact that the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes and the Eagles do not. And it's not even a criticism of Jalen Hurts. Hurts is a good player. He's not Patrick Mahomes because you know why? In the year 2022, 2023, nobody is Patrick Mahomes. Absolutely nobody is. And I've gotten to a point, I originally thought I was going to pick the Eagles for this week. I really did. I thought their roster, top to bottom, was too deep. They do too many things offensively. It was just going to be a little bit too much. I think, what did Matt give us on Monday? 31-27 was his final score prediction.
Yeah.
I thought very similar. I would have put the Eagles on top. I've changed my mind and I'm picking the Chiefs in this game. They've got the most untouchable, incomparable piece in the NFL. One of the most incomparable pieces in the history of the league. And I mean the league. Like Red Grange playing like a 1980s running back in the 1920s. I mean like Johnny Unitas being a semi-modern day quarterback in the 1950s and 60s. That is the kind of piece that Patrick Mahomes is. They don't have that clear and present danger this year that is going to destroy the team, whether or not Mahomes is on. So if it's all level, if it's all even, I don't really care who's playing on the other side. I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes, and I'm going to take the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think, personally, I've done too much analyzing of all this other stuff. Chiefs have number 15. The Eagles do not.
And that's kind of in the same vein of what I've been saying all week, is that if the game comes down to a game of quarterbacks and which of them is going to make a play and which of them is not going to make a play, I will take the Chiefs in that scenario 10 times out of 10. And again, I don't mean that in a disrespectful way to Jalen Hurts. I just watched Super Bowl 54, where that game was in doubt in the fourth quarter, and Patrick Mahomes had time to run wasp and had time for 2 scoring drives, and Chiefs ended up overturning a 10-point deficit, winning that game by 11 points there in the fourth quarter. And when Jimmy Garoppolo had to stand up and be counted, and he had his chance to make a Super Bowl winning play, he let it go by the wayside. He overthrew Emmanuel Sanders. He took a sack on 4th down. Patrick Mahomes made the plays, led the drives, did what needed doing to win against a great team with a great defense, with a great front four that got downhill and got in the backfield and racked up a bunch of sacks. And I just am feeling very similarly about this game as I am about Super Bowl 54. And the reason I'm getting those vibes and not Super Bowl 55 vibes is because in Super Bowl 55, the Chiefs started Mike Remmers, the first ever 2-time Super Bowl least valuable player award winner at left tackle.
Really? That would be a fun exercise. Go back to every Super Bowl. Who was the worst player in it?
Mike Remmers, Super Bowl 50, Super Bowl 55. The most important player in the wrong way for his team, because he was the dude who couldn't block Shaq Barrett, who I would argue should have been Super Bowl MVP, Super Bowl 55. And he was the dude that couldn't block Von Miller, who was the MVP of Super Bowl 50. So, yeah, there's not a flaw that the Chiefs aren't going to be able to overcome. Mahomes is just different. Don't insult Jalen Hurts by trying to compare him to Patrick Mahomes. He's a great player, Jalen Hurts. He keeps getting better every year, and he's got a great future in this league. And he's going to make some plays on Sunday. And he's going to make believers out of some people who do think he's a bum, because I know there are people out there who still aren't quite on the Jalen Hurts train because they remember him getting benched in college, or they remember the fumble issue he had at Oklahoma. And they just don't want to see it for whatever reason with a athletic quarterback, with a quarterback who brings a lot of value with his legs. He's a heck of a player. He is not, and no one is, Patrick LeVon Mahomes II.
Mike Remmers, Andrew Wiley, Stefan Wisniewski, Nick Allegretti, Austin Ryder. That group started a Super Bowl.
They could have gotten 5 bouncers from Power and Light, and it would have been the same football game.
Wisniewski was particularly amazing because the year before he had been really good. Remember that? He was real nice pickup. Second time around,
he was a bit past it.
Fell off a cliff. By the way, the all-time worst Super Bowl performance by a player that actually impacted the game got to be Neil O'Donnell, right?
Yeah, those 2 really bad picks for Pittsburgh in Super Bowl 30. Yeah, he was pretty bad.
The entire Broncos roster in Super Bowl 48.
Yeah. You can't really pin that on one guy.
No.
Barrett Robbins going walkabout in Tijuana before Super Bowl 36. I think that was the center for the Raiders. Eugene Robinson, man of the year.
Yeah.
Getting busted for trying to pay for it. What? Paying for it. The night before the Super Bowl 33, and then getting cooked by Rod Smith. Eugene Robinson, they should name the award after him.
Yeah, they really should.
This should be the Eugene Robinson Super Bowl least valuable player.
By the way, for those who are interested in such a thing, the Chiefs, still underdogs by 1.5 in the Super Bowl. 71% of bets are on the Eagles, and 69% of the money wagered is on the Eagles by the public.
It's very similar to the take on the Bengals for the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
It's feeling very similar, where the public is going against the Chiefs for whatever reason. You know who's part of the public? You folks listening at home. And this year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because you can download FanDuel right now and use my promo code Lucero when you get signed up, so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. You can bet on the Chiefs. I'll tell you what, I think if you bet on the Eagles, you're going to wish you had a no-sweat first bet. But you can bet on the Chiefs right now and get them at plus value because they are underdogs on the money line. You can bet any kind of player prop you can conceive, all kinds of great bets on a top-rated sportsbook app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. And best of all, you get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today with promo code Lucero, that's Lucero, to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57 and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. You must be 21 and present in Kansas. First online real money wager only. $10 deposit required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com.
We'll talk some more Super Bowl, some more NFL news later on in the show. Right now, we've got to get to our first break of the day. One Gotta Go is coming up. We've also got our Wendy's High School Athletes of the Week this hour here on 580 Sports Talk. Let's play some One Gotta Go, shall we? Here on this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan. All right, I've got 4 defensive linemen that are going to play in the Super Bowl. One's gotta go. Chris Jones, Frank Clark. Remember, this is the postseason, so it's postseason Frank Clark.
Very important distinction.
Fletcher Cox, Hassan Reddick. One gotta go.
Fletcher Cox is still really good, but he is not the great player he once was. So my gut says him. Jones and Reddick have been the best defensive players for their respective teams in this playoff. And maybe this is maybe a bit of homerism is leaking in, but Clark's been awesome in the playoffs too. And his track record in the playoffs is stellar in a way that I think I got to keep him. So, yeah, Fletcher Cox is the one who's got to go for me.
I'm with you on that, and that's not intended to slight Fletcher Cox because he still is a very good player. Pretty much every team in the league would be better if they had Fletcher Cox on it, but he is just not quite what he once was, and which tells you how good he once was. But Chris Jones is as of this year, is the best defensive tackle in the NFL. Still body of work that belongs to Aaron Donald, but this year it's Chris Jones. Frank Clark in the playoffs is a different beast. And for this matchup specifically, as you pointed out the other day, against the run, he's always been good. The problems have never come defending the run for him. It's been getting after the quarterback. Well, against a team that needs to run the ball and is going to try to run the ball a lot, or at the very least set up a lot of their passing games because of their misdirection run game, Frank Clark is going to end up being massive. And I think in the playoffs, again, he's just a different animal. And then Hassan Reddick, I said it the other day, I think he's been the best defensive player of any team in the playoffs this year. So I'm not taking him off the list. So I'm with you on Fletcher Cox, but that is a murderer's row of defensive linemen. So much talent. Just overall, there's so much talent in this Super Bowl. Like every position group you go to, you can say, yeah, that's a top 5 guy at his position in the NFL. Yeah, that's the number 1 quarterback. That's the number 1 tight end. That's a top 5 receiver and like a top 15 receiver, both for Philadelphia. And maybe a top 5 tight end, too, if you like Dallas Goedert, should he be able to stay healthy. You've got top 10 offensive linemen on both teams. It's an incredible amount of talent in this game.
So we'll play the same game, except we'll play it with pass-catching weapons. A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, Travis Kelce, Juju Smith-Schuster. Assume health for Juju to make him less than the obvious choice here because he's been struggling with the knee. But assume that a week off has done him some good. He's been a full participant in practice this week. Looks like he's going to be ready to go. Mm-hmm. So assuming all 4 guys peak of their powers, Brown, Goddard, Kelce, Juju, one's got to go.
All right. So let's do process of elimination here. Travis Kelce is not going anywhere. He stays. A.J. Brown is the best wide receiver in this game. He stays. So it comes down to Goddard and Juju. This is tough. Both are really good players. Both are very effective players. They fill their role uniquely well. I would probably keep Juju and move Dallas Goedert out, but that's tough. I think, if we were playing this game in terms of, you're building a team, we're doing a fantasy draft of every player in the NFL, I'd probably assign more value to Goddard than I would Juju because I don't think there are that many really good tight ends. And there are a lot and we're in the golden age of wide receivers right now. There are so many who are so good and have legitimate top tier all time kind of caliber out. I mean, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, boom, right off the top of my head. That's 3 guys who all might be Canton bound. Justin Jefferson is a child compared to most of the NFL still. So if we were doing it that way, like if we weren't using the lens of the Super Bowl to pick it, I think I might move Juju out. But given the context, I think I would probably lean with him. That's tough, though. It's one of those two. I'll keep Juju. I like what he can do. Pretty much anything you want out of a wide receiver, whatever alignment, whatever kind of route he can run. He's got a full route tree, even though he's not a true deep threat by any means. But I would keep him for his versatility, even though I do like Goddard and his size. So that's close, but I'll keep Juju. I'll punt Goddard.
Yeah, I think the ceiling for Juju's performance is a little higher. Goddard had just 3 games this year with over 80 yards receiving. Juju had 5. Juju had 2 100-yard receiving games. Goddard had 1. It was 100 on the nose, and it was against Houston. So I would lean Juju there to keep and say Goddard's got to go. Like you look at his numbers, it's really solid tight end production, but it's super consistent tight end production too. Like this is not a knock in any stretch of the imagination, but I mean, he's basically been the same guy his whole career in terms of target volume and receptions. It's the yards per catch that have gone up in the Sirianni, Shane Steichen offense the last couple of years, which is to his credit.
Yeah.
But no, I think there's a little bit of a higher performance ceiling with Smith-Schuster.
Yeah, he being Goddard has had a couple of games that are 6 targets, 2 catches, 22 yards against Dallas in mid-October. Like, that's not great, but he really was. You need 60 to 80 yards. He's your guy, and he's going to get you that a good number of times per season, or really like 45 to 80 yards. Dallas Goedert is your guy. That is remarkable consistency. Coming up tomorrow at this time, our usual game is either or over under. I think tomorrow, should we do prop bets?
Yeah.
All right, we'll do prop bets tomorrow, so get those ready. This is something that I think is important to know. This is a PSA if you wanted to wager on this. In Kansas, you cannot actually wager on some of the real goofy prop bets for the Super Bowl, like the Gatorade color. You can't wager on that in Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that until today. Jake actually pointed it out to me. You can bet on anything in the game, like some real crazy stuff. We were looking at them today. Thought, wow, the total, you can really wager on this. The total number of the jersey numbers of players who score touchdowns in the game. So, like, if Patrick Mahomes and Jerick McKinnon each had a rushing touchdown and Kelsey had a receiving touchdown, that would be what?
103.
103?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good quick math there.
Thank you.
Like, you can wager on over under a certain number for that. But you can't wager on the Gatorade color or like the length of the anthem or things like that.
Huh.
I think it's because those are things that like the normal person can more easily like influence and impact. Like in New York, they don't allow this either, but in New York, you can't even gamble on who's going to win like MVP or baseball Cy Young awards or things like that, because the logic is, well, those are voted on by people outside the sport. So theoretically, gamblers could influence them and they could influence the winnings. You can only wager on things actually happening on the field there. Kansas a little more lenient in that regard.
Yeah.
But yeah, no blue Gatorade wagers in the state of Kansas. We might still throw some of those in, though.
Yeah. The numbers are out there.
They are out there. They can be found. So that'll come up tomorrow, filling in for either or over under here on 580 Sports Talk. Right now, though, we've got to get to a break. Our athlete of the week, Jackson Thomas from Seaman, is up next on 580 Sports Talk. is time for our Wendy's High School Athlete of the Week here on 580 Sports Talk, and we are headed to North Topeka for this one today. Talk to one of the best wrestlers in the state of Kansas. His name is Jackson Thomas. He is a senior for the Vikings. How about a 40-4 record on the year? And in 2 pins at the United Kansas Conference meet this past weekend, Jackson picked up pins in 41 and 55 seconds to pull off an individual title at his weight class. So we talked all about the UKC meet with Jackson, his year overall, his football prowess this year as well, what the future is going to look like for the Vikings standout, and more. So without further ado, let's get to our Wendy's High School Athlete of the Week, Jackson Thomas, a senior wrestler for the Seaman Vikings. Our Wendy's Male High School Athlete of the Week is Jackson Thomas, a standout senior wrestler for the Seaman Vikings, who picked up the 285-pound championship at the UKC meet this past weekend with some dominant wins. How about pins in 55 seconds and 41 seconds into meetings to help win Seaman the team crown over Shawnee Heights as well? And Jackson, let's just start there with this past weekend, taking on some really tough UKC competition. What was working so well for you? Because 2 pins in under a minute sounds pretty darn impressive.
Hey, I just really went out there and I got really aggressive. And I think that's what really let me just go out there and dominate those 2, because I just kind of smothered them with my speed and agility on them. So
when you talk about going out there and wanting to be aggressive and getting into that space, how much mental energy does it take to get there? Is it something that just comes naturally that, all right, I see my opponents, let's get aggressive, let's go? Or is there sort of a mental build-up process to get into the right mindset for a meet like that?
For a while before I go out there and wrestle, I just try and just empty my mind, get completely calm, and then I use that to just build up as I start to wrestle. And I try and go into it completely empty-minded, so I can just unleash all my energy on just smothering my opponent and being aggressive.
While you're actually in the middle of wrestling, while you're out there on the mat and you go in with that clear mind, is that something that stays consistent throughout a match, throughout a meet, that you're able to keep everything out? Or are you constantly taking notes and remembering things and thinking of things while you're actually in combat?
I'm just kind of just going with the flow. I try and keep it fully empty. And during the match, obviously, I think through my moves, but by the time it's over, I don't really even remember what I'm doing, because I just go right back into clearing my mind for the next one.
We're talking to Jackson Thomas, a senior wrestler for the Seaman Vikings. He's our Wendy's Male High School Athlete of the Week. 40-4 overall on the season. And Jackson, I do want to talk about your overall season, not just this past weekend as well. Overall, what would you say has been your number one assessment of the way you've performed this year? Do you feel like this is what you wanted to be as a senior? Do you feel like there are still some areas where you can improve as we get towards state and the rest of the season? How would you assess the way that you've wrestled over the course of the year so far?
I think I have a long way to go, and I think I can really just improve so much more as it goes on. And over the season, I think I've hit a few learning curves, jumping at this high of a weight and wrestling just being 225, but I think I've used my abilities well, and I've taken advantage of what I had to be able to just go out there and compete.
What went into that weight change for you? I mean, was that something consciously you wanted to try? Was that just a matter of, hey, I'm bigger now, I got to try something new? How does that happen over the course of a season or over an off season to get to that point for someone like myself or others who maybe aren't familiar with the inner workings of wrestling?
Well, all throughout high school, I've wrestled the same weight, no matter if I was undersized or not. I wrestled 195 for all 3 years before this, and just focusing so much on football in the off season. I mean, for football, you try and be as big as possible. So over the summer, I got up 225 and even was pushing 230. So I just knew that I wouldn't want to cut, because I know how it's affected me before, because I'm not exactly very good at cutting, and I tend to lose a lot of my progress when I lose my weight. So I think keeping that really helped me, and just I thought it would be super fun to go out there and wrestle dudes who were bigger than me, because usually I'm used to being kind of the dude everyone thinks is the big guy, and I like going out there and showing that even being bigger than people, I can still compete with those way heavier than me.
Absolutely love that attitude, Jackson. I did want to follow up, though. You said you feel like there's still a long way to go. What does that entail? What is included in the things you are still looking to accomplish or improve on here as the season winds down?
I want to go into the state tournament just being able to dominate my opponents. I think I can get to a level where I can be comfortable going against even the top ranked people.
We're talking to Jackson Thomas, a senior wrestler for the Seaman Vikings. He is our Wendy's Male High School Athlete of the Week. You also, Jackson, mentioned football and how important that was during the fall, and we got to see you guys a couple of times this year. Another strong season for Seaman football. When you go back to the start of your senior year overall, so we're talking summer between last year and this year and getting ready for football, getting ready for wrestling, what are some of the overall athletic goals you had for yourself? Were they in terms of, statistical markers? Were they in terms of wins on the mat? What were some of those goals you set out for yourself? And do you feel like to this point you've accomplished most of those, both football and wrestling wise?
I think I've accomplished a lot wrestling wise. Football wise, I still think I have really far to go, and I hope to improve a lot on that. But wrestling wise, I don't try and look at stats. I just try and make sure I'm improving from the last time I wrestled. Always being better than what I was before. And I don't usually look at stats, but I mean, sometimes it's good to look and see where you come from.
Looking ahead then, Jackson, obviously I've mentioned it a couple of times. This is your senior year. It's been a tremendous career for you, both on the football field and wrestling for Seaman. What is next for you? Do you have anything currently planned for a post-secondary education, playing college football, wrestling in college, or possibly doing something else? What are your future plans looking like as of early February 2023?
I'm looking at playing football in college, but I try not to shut any doors. I know my wrestling coaches really want me to continue and go wrestle, but I'm just not totally sure. Looking at colleges right now, trying to find the right opportunity for me. So,
if football is the path you end up following, is there a specific position you're looking to play? I know you've got experience, both offensive and defensive line, some linebacker experience too, if I'm not mistaken. Do you have a preference of where you would play? Should it be football that you follow at the next level?
I think linebacker, running back, around those, because especially on defense, my entire career's been rushing the QB, and getting a little bit of linebacker experience has really helped me become more versatile with how I can attack. And just being on that line is really great for me on defense. But of course, offense, you get a lot of glory. So, and that's always nice.
Well, what a senior season it has been for Jackson Thomas from the Seaman Vikings. A great year on the football field, and now a sensational year wrestling as well. 40-4 overall on the season. A championship at the United Kansas Conference meet this past week as well. And Jackson is our Wendy's Male High School Athlete of the Week. Jackson, thank you for taking the time for us. I know things are very busy this time of year, but we appreciate the time. Best of luck to you with whatever's to come in the future and with the rest of this wrestling season.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. It was great.
That is Jackson Thomas from the Seaman Vikings, our Wendy's Male High School Athlete of the Week. That interview will be live on our website, 580wibw.com, here in just a matter of moments. 40-4 on the year.
Pretty good.
Pretty freaking good.
Pretty good.
Along with a all-league caliber football season, wherever Jackson ends up. I know he's gotten some interest from a couple different NAIA programs. He's going to be just fine at the collegiate level. Coming up in the 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk, we've got a lot of college basketball to get to. K-State whomping TCU last night. Good environment at Bramlage Coliseum. Fun night for some basketball. Great individual performances. Profitable night of basketball as well, if you're into that kind of thing. Tim Fitzgerald is going to join us, too, for the Azura Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up, and we'll find today's winner in What Is Wrong With You. Don't forget, you are welcome to be a part of the show at all times on the Big O Tires text line. That number, as always, 785-272-9429. And you can go comment on YouTube as well. Our channel is Sports on 580 WIBW. If you haven't subscribed, go do it now. Dan's recap from the game last night is up on the YouTube channel. My recap from KU on Monday is up there too, plus all of our live streams. Sports on 580 WIBW, again, is our channel. We've got to take a break. The news is next. We're back at 4:06 on 580 Sports Talk. now, 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW. Thank you so much for joining us today. With you until 6 o'clock. If you missed the first hour of the show, head to our website, 580WIBW.com. Hover over the podcast tab and then click on 580 Sports Talk, and that's where you will find the hour-by-hour breakdown of the show. You can also, of course, participate in the program on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429, and also jump into the YouTube comment section. Sports on 580 WIBW is our YouTube account. Comment section is wide open. Let us know your thoughts on anything we are talking about on the show today. And coming up on the show this hour, we've got plenty of college basketball to get to. K-State took down TCU last night. We'll get our recap of that game. Tim Fitzgerald is going to join us later on this hour, too, to talk all about it in the Azura Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up. And we've got today's What Is Wrong With You coming your way. It's all here on this 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. Last night, we were both in Manhattan for K-State versus TCU. First game I had taken in at Bramlage this year. Fun time. I am just a magnet for fans who demand that everyone in the whole crowd hears them from 19 rows up. Just a magnet.
You always
for that
seem to
fan.
find that guy, huh?
Yeah, it was while working last Tuesday at Allen Fieldhouse.
Chet from Eudora.
Yeah, our pal Chet from Eudora, who just had to make sure that all 16,300 people in attendance knew he was clapping and he didn't like Keontae Johnson and that he was mad about the officials. Last night, we were in a pretty subdued area. You know, people stood up and there were big moments and sat down for a lot. You know, it was generally pleasant. And the guy right in front of me just made sure a couple of times, and he was like, 6'40" and super tall and right in the way. Made sure to point, and he waved goodbye after a basket with 6 minutes left in the game. I was like, okay, it's a little early for the wave goodbye taunt. That was a bit annoying, but other than that, really exciting night at Bramlage.
He might have been the reason TCU got it to within 6 about a minute and a half later. He may have inspired that with his brand of fandom.
It was weirdly, for a 21-point game, it was not an easy night for K-State, but it kind of felt like it should have been an easy night. The number one thing I noticed about the game, more than anything else, maybe more so than even Tyke Green having a big effort, Desi Sills was great off the bench, Marquise Noel was good. Something's got to be figured out with Keontae Johnson's foul problems, fair or unfair. The number one thing I noticed is that without Mike Miles, TCU does not have an adult in the room, and they need that adult in the room. Anyway, 5 minutes into the game, I thought this game is over. They are just chucking up bad shots. They're making bad decisions, and that was pretty much on and off the entire game. And I thought, man, they badly need someone out there who can say, give me the ball. I am going to make this happen. You are going to do your role. Because it just felt like pickup ball for a while for TCU. And K-State was awesome. They scored 82 points. It was a really good day for K-State. But I almost took more away from TCU just being a mess without their best player out there.
Yeah, Jerome Tang was quick to point that out in the post-game press conference that, like, this is not the same TCU team that beat them in Fort Worth because Mike Miles is not playing and because Eddie Lampkin is hoofing it around on one leg. And look, all the respect in the world for him trying to get back out there and play. It was a nasty ankle sprain he suffered January 21st against Kansas. Like, it's going to take some time before he gets back to the player that he can be, but he had no explosiveness, no lift. The only thing he could do out there was be big. And that wasn't sufficient against Kansas State last night because they needed him to chip in rebounding and chip in some scoring, and he couldn't do it. TCU scored when they got to the rim. Like, that was their offense, was they have the ability. They've got some slashers, and they can get to and finish effectively around the rim. When they're not doing that, they cannot put the ball in the basket. They were 3 of 17 from the three-point arc last night. And I thought that K-State, particularly in the final stages of the game, final 10 minutes or so, did a lot better job making sure that TCU had to settle for longer shots. It's a big reason why they put that 15-0 run together there in the final minutes. I mean, TCU did close it to within 6, but it never felt like they had a run in them, and it also didn't really feel like K-State. The game kind of got choppy at that stage too. Like the final 10 minutes, you saw more whistles and you saw more free throws, and the game kind of got out of a rhythm. There were a lot of stoppages. And so it did. It didn't feel competitive, but it also didn't feel like satisfying for Kansas State until the very end. The end of the game was kind of a catharsis. They put that run together and they did what they ended up needing to do. They finished with a flourish. Keontae Johnson got some buckets. Marquise Noel hit one from center court with a minute to play. It's a good win. It was a necessary win. We talked yesterday about the Kansas-Texas game and what Jay Billis said on that broadcast about every night there's a desperate team in the league. Every night you're going up against a team that needs this game for whatever reason, whether it's the Big 12 race or whether it's the bubble or whether it's you're trying to avoid a losing streak. And that's where K-State was last night. They didn't want to lose 3 straight, and they didn't want to lose 4 straight in the league. And so they play with a bit of a chip on their shoulder. They play with a desperation. They play with a hunger. It revealed itself in the 19 turnovers they forced and the fact that they had a rebounding advantage in the game. So it was all things that I think if you're Jerome Tang, if you're the Wildcats, you can be pretty pleased with. You mentioned the bench. That was a big story last night. They got 29 bench points. Desi Sills played a really solid, you talk about a solid workman like vets game off the bench. 14 points, 6 boards, 4 assists, no turnovers. Like really, really sound game from Desi Sills. Tyke Green out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Most minutes he played in a Big 12 game this year. He gives you 13 and 9. As I remember, it was a matchup thing with Green because he played a bunch in Fort Worth too. And last night his minutes kind of came at the expense of Ish Massoud, who only played 4 minutes. But TCU's a 4-guard team. So it's a bit of a matchup thing. K-State matched that and went with a smaller lineup, went with a 4-guard lineup. Tyke Green was playing the 4, which is not his natural position. What Jerome Tang called it in the postgame, he said that's the dunker spot, is, the 4 spot, down on the post, receiving passes from drivers, not like stuck in the corner, but cutting or kind of lingering on the baseline there on the block. And one thing Tyke Green can do is dunk the basketball. I remember thinking about early in the second half that realizing that, boy, we've seen a lot of Tyke Green in this game. And I didn't think he was playing well, but he was playing hard. Like his effort was noticeably there. His energy was noticeably there. And then he got rewarded for that late in the game. I think that, and I've run into coaches who've said this, that basketball will reward you for playing a game with a lot of energy and good effort and good preparation, that the game will reward you. Like the flow of the game will come to you and you'll get opportunities to finish the night with a line on the stat sheet that is reflective of your participation and reflective of your effort. And that happened for Tyke Green last night. He had a couple of those dunks late. He ended up finishing with 13 points, 9 rebounds. Both of those were season highs. And it's a big confidence jolt for Tyke, who played a good game. And Desi Sills played a good game. And I thought Bebe Isiola's minutes were good. Just a really sound bench performance. And it comes back to a theme that we've noticed throughout the league this year. When you play at home, you get better minutes from your reserves. There's a comfort level there. And there was a comfort level from K-State's reserves last night. They were deeper. They just decisively won those reserve minutes and were good value for a much needed victory.
And I think, we've spent so much time talking about KU's bench this year because it really has not been very productive at all. K-State has gotten more production, but I think it is generally, accepted theory that if you can get whoever is providing it good minutes, good time off the bench from anybody. There's Sills and Green last night. It's been Massoud in the past. Sills has had other huge games. The first meeting with Kansas, Sills was obviously huge. If you can just get a couple of guys in each game who really thrive off the bench, that's massive. That's going to help you. That's going to help you when you get to postseason play, when you don't necessarily need to play 9 guys in a game. You might only play 8. You might only play 7. KU won a national title essentially playing 7 guys, right? Except for occasionally they threw KJ Adams in for a defense-only matchup. If you know when you're Jerome Tang that you can say, hey, there are some games where Massoud is going to have a good matchup. He can be 10 points off the bench. Hell, 8 points and a few rebounds off the bench. Desi Sills is I mean, he's your sixth man. He, generally speaking, I know Masood was first off yesterday, but you know what I mean. Like, he's the guy who we most reliably can go to give us 15-ish minutes off the bench and produce. Some matchups are going to favor Tyke Green or someone else, but we know we've got this group of guys who we can play the matchups with, and given a certain scenario, we can trust that they can go out there and they can make an impact. And in a game like last night, in which you didn't have a lot of Keontae Johnson, what was his total number of minutes played? Do you remember?
Wasn't much more than 20. Let me pull up. I can get to the box here in just a second.
Yeah, here, I've actually got it in front of me. So Keontae Johnson, he played 25 minutes in the game.
Yeah.
More later because there were fewer fouls there were a ton of fouls late in the game, but fewer by him.
Yeah, I think he played like 16 of those in the second half.
When he's not out there on the floor, especially early, because he does continue to get in foul trouble, and we'll get to that specifically in a moment, you need to know, hey, this matchup, we've got to find a guy who can go out there and get buckets. Because when all your starters, they have a specific role out there on the court that they need to fill for this team. For Keontae Johnson, he is the bucket getter. You need a tough shot. We were talking about that with Texas yesterday. They've got all these dudes who can make tough contested shots. Not every team has that. Well, K-State's got two of those guys. One, because Marquise Noel has unlimited range, and we saw that in the game with him taking two different logo threes. But Johnson is your inside the perimeter tough bucket guy. That is what he is the best at, and that's something that other guys to that same level do not have. So if he's not on the floor, you've got to get Green or Sills or someone else out there actually making an impact, and that's what they got last night. Now, the other side of that is you got to keep Keontae Johnson on the floor.
Yeah.
And
it was 27-26 K-State in the 15 minutes he didn't play. 1 point game. The 25
minutes 20 when he was out there.
Yes.
Which is indicative of how good of a player he is, and that's even with 6 turnovers yesterday by Keontae.
3 of those were offensive fouls. One of them was an obvious call. The other 2 were of varying degrees of dubious. I actually thought, I can't believe I'm going to compliment Doug Sermons out loud, but I did it on Twitter last night, so I may as well continue it. I thought that was a decently officiated game because Doug Sermons was overruling his other his other officials in some spots where they needed to be overruled. But again, I thought that was a game that had a good flow and that it wasn't egregiously officiated, I thought, in one way or another. That's 2 in a row in the Big 12 that I felt like, hey, that wasn't so bad.
Here's the big test. We got 3 Big 12 games tonight.
Mm-hmm.
There's your big test.
The real shocker, maybe it was a Doug Sermons body double or something. It wasn't the real Doug Sermons because Keontae Johnson got called for his 3rd foul, and he spiked the basketball 3 straight times into the hardwood. And I'm thinking, oh boy, here comes a tee. Doug Sermons is quicker to tee you up than maybe any other official in the country. Certainly more than most in the Big 12. And he did it right next to Doug Sermons. Sermons didn't do anything about it. So, and look, I respect that because it wasn't directed at the official. It was clearly directed at himself. It was his own frustration over getting called for a 3rd foul. He wasn't yelling at anything. He wasn't, swearing at the official or, directing it at anybody. It was just general frustration. Yep. Let athletes be frustrated and let them be excited and don't tee them up for being either thing. So again, shout out to the officials, but that is the one thing that they got to figure out how to keep him on the hardwood because he's too important to them because they'll run into a game where he picks up 2 first half fouls and then they dig themselves a hole. Like that's what's happened the last 2 times out that he's been in first half foul trouble, but K-State played well with him on the bench in the first half. They survived that, which again, easier to do at home where your bench guys are more comfortable. They survived that against Texas to an extent, had the 11-point lead in the locker room. They survived it against TCU, had the 6-point lead into the locker room. But, they could run into a team and it could happen at home or it could happen on the road where Keontae Johnson picks up 2 fouls in the first 5 minutes and they got to sit him for most of the half. They don't have to, but that's the tendency for Jerome Tang. It's a tendency for most coaches. And then you look up and you're down 10. And now Keontae Johnson's got to rescue you in the second half instead of playing with a lead. So, yeah, he's got to be more careful. Tang talked about that, too, in the postgame, that some of the fouls that are being called on him is just him needing to know that that's what teams are looking to do against him when he gets downhill. They want to draw the charge. They want to get him into foul trouble. So go ahead and jump stop and shoot it over him. Or jump stop and make a pass. There's a pass available if you've got a help defender coming up and stepping in to try and draw that charge. And so I think he'll get there. I don't think this is like a long-term problem. I don't think the Big 12 officials are out to get Keontae Johnson. I just think he's got to learn from the game situation, understand this is how he's being defended. Marquise Noel has to make a similar adjustment to how he's being defended. He turned the ball over 6 times last night, and a lot of times that was him dribbling into trouble.
Yeah.
He's got to stop. He's over dribbling a little bit right now, maybe trying a little too hard to make a play. He finished with 18 points, 7 assists, which makes him the all-time single-season assists leader in K-State history, which is a pretty cool
Super
note.
Cool.
He is going to put that record way out in the bleachers.
Yeah.
Like, that is going to be in the upper deck. Like, nobody is reaching that record for a very long time to come.
I mean, they've got bare minimum 9 games left for this season.
Yeah.
7 regular season games, at least one in the Big 12 tournament, at least one in the NCAA tournament.
And he's averaging, 7 assists a game? I mean, that's 50, 60 assists that minimum that he should end up with, and he could get even further if they go further along in the tournaments. So he wasn't bad last night, but just has to make better decisions. But the other thing too, and I'm not, and this is why I thought it was an improvement, I'm not as harsh on him for the turnovers last night as I was about Texas, is that's what TCU does. Yeah. TCU turns you over. They turned K-State over 15 times. A lot of those were late, like really late, and were in that sequence where TCU got within 6. And then K-State cleaned those up, and they went on a 17-2 run to close the game. So I'm a little more forgiving about the turnover number against a team that is such a high turnover forcing team like TCU. And I thought it was an improvement for Noel in some ways, but he does have to be smarter about dribbling into trouble. That's the thing he's doing right now that's costing him.
The other thing about Keontae that I want to bring up, because I agree, it's not that the officials are out to get him necessarily, but I think there is truth to officials know this guy's a fouler. This guy commits a lot of fouls. He has gotten in foul trouble a lot, and they are keeping a much keener eye out for it, and maybe have they maybe do have a quicker whistle. Not that it's an intentional, we want to call fouls on this guy, but dudes develop reputations, just like some officials develop reputations for going to the monitor 900 times, or they like to call games with a lot of fouls, like a John Higgins or someone else. They know too, hey, he fouls a lot. So keep an eye on him. Make sure you're paying extra close attention when he is defending, when he's got the ball, when he's going downhill, whatever. That happens sometimes. The guy who comes to my mind, totally different type of player, but a KU guy from 2013-14, Tark Black. Remember Tark Black?
Oh, yeah.
1 year, he's a grad transfer from Memphis, I think it was.
Ended up with an NBA career, which was stunning to me.
It was amazing because I remember Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy came to a game. They came to practice at KU one time. And Aaron Rodgers told Tarek Black, he's like, hey, I'm entirely serious. If the NBA does not work out, give me a call. Here's my number. I'll get you a tryout with the Packers, like to play tight end. And then he ended up playing 7 years in the NBA, and then he might still be playing overseas, honestly. Mm-hmm. The reason Joel Embiid started to play more in the middle of the 13-14 season is Tarek Black had 2 fouls by the under 12 timeout in every single game.
Yeah,
he was in so much foul trouble constantly.
Yeah, that's right.
It got to a point where it was, dude, that's not a foul. Like, these refs just know he commits a lot of them, so every time there was contact,
he didn't get the benefit of the doubt.
Exactly. And I think we're at a point with Keontae like that.
Yeah, that's more realistic than the idea that, they're out to get him for whatever reason. No, he is. He's not getting the benefit of the doubt on the whistle right now. But he's a good enough player, and he's a veteran enough player to make the adjustment he needs to make. I don't think that's a long-term concern for Keontae Johnson. I think he'll get that figured out, and I think he'll be better at it even by the time Saturday rolls around and they're in Lubbock. And they won't be the desperate team. Like, Texas Tech needs to start winning some basketball games.
Yeah.
We're not talking bubble with them anymore because they're not on it. Mm-hmm. We're talking about, like, Mark Adams going to get fired if they don't start winning some basketball games.
Who is going to leave if they do not finish the year in a strong manner?
So they are the desperate team in the Saturday matchup. And I asked Jerome Tang about this in the postgame. And I asked him, how do you maintain the edge of that desperation, for lack of a better way to put it? How do you maintain that edge in every game moving forward, that chip on your shoulder? And his answer, boiled down, paraphrased, was, it can't come from me, and it can't come from the coaching staff. That has to be on the players. And he says, we were picked to finish last in this league. We've been playing with a chip on our shoulder all year, but success, you get a little fat and happy. Those weren't his words, but again, I'm paraphrasing here. You get a little fat and happy on your own success. And maybe K-State was a little bit of a victim of that here over the last couple of weeks. But if they've got that chip back on their shoulder and they can play with that the rest of the way, they might be the team that rule about, hey, the more desperate team is the one who's winning a lot of these league games. They may be the team, the exception that proves that rule moving forward. If they can play with that same, because they came out noticeably more active, more aggressive, a little more fire in their bellies last night.
Couple quick things here before we get to a commercial break. One, caveat, there is no easy stretch of Big 12 play. There's not.
No.
But relative to other teams and other parts of the schedule, the rest of the way for K-State's really not that bad.
No, their hardest games are at home.
Well, and they play all 4 of the bottom 4 teams in the league, including Oklahoma twice. And they only have 2 ranked games left.
Yeah.
Iowa State at home, Baylor at home.
Yeah, they're both at home.
That's really not too shabby.
You could argue their toughest game left is the trip to Morgantown.
I think there is absolutely an argument for that.
It's either that game or the trip to or going to Oklahoma State. It's one of those two.
West Virginia's going to have a lot to play for in that game.
Yes, they are.
Because they're going to be firmly on the bubble.
So's Oklahoma State.
Yes.
So the roads, there are no easy road games. It's like going to Lubbock will be a hard game on Saturday, even though that's the last place team in the league. Just ask Iowa State how that worked for them. So they got to be on their P's and Q's. But yeah, certainly it is a favorable schedule.
Couple clothing comments from the YouTube comment section. One, thank you for the kind words about my USC shirt. I'm not a USC fan, but the shirt is dope. Shout out to our friends at Home Field Apparel. Also, reach out to us, by the way, Home Field. Anyway,
I'm wearing Home Field under my my pullover today.
Vance says he wanted to see me having a K-State shirt on. I wore one last night. I was at the game as a fan. I was there with my wife, who has her master's from K-State. I wore purple for the game. I don't own a K-State hat. I actually wore this same one.
I own a K-State hat.
Well,
I like this hat a lot.
There you go.
It's
nice hat.
Pretty slick.
Tim Fitzgerald, speaking of the Cats, is going to join us later on this hour. But up next, we've got What Is Wrong With You here on 580 Sports Talk. What the hell is right? Time to get to what is wrong with you on this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. Tim Fitzgerald will join us coming up in a few minutes. But first, let's get to today's stories. They'll try to take down our weekly winner, the plunger attacker, the gentleman from Las Vegas who went to Des Moines, the downtown Marriott, 18th floor, stripped all the way down to the nude, pulled out a toilet plunger, and then tried to attack someone.
Getting rowdy in Des Moines. With a toilet plunger.
Rowdy in Des Moines is the name of my new art house film. Two stories for today. I'll go first, Dan. I've got one that is a fairly familiar story, actually, over the last couple of weeks. We've had a few stories similar to this, but the punchline is the pièce de résistance. So we go to the Palm Coast of Florida, where a local man broke into a gas station and stole multiple items. He was later identified after he left behind his debit card at the scene of the crime.
Oh, boy.
Deputies responded to the business after its alarm went off early Sunday morning and found that the front door had been unlocked. Inside the empty gas station, they found the debit card with the name Lance Kurtz on the counter near the register. Lance with a Z, by the way. Lance.
The common spelling.
The gas station owner reviewed surveillance video which showed a man entering the store from the back, taking multiple items, then unlocking the front door and leaving. Why not just go out the way you came? Law enforcement said they recognized Kurtz from a previous vehicle fire near the gas station that had happened earlier in the evening. So we went back to the scene of the crime and committed another crime. They spoke with Kurtz, who was found in the same location as his disabled vehicle, and he did admit to breaking into the business and taking the items. But, according to the sheriff's office, Kurtz told deputies he left behind his debit card intentionally so he could go back to the business and pay for the items he stole later on.
Oh, yeah.
The sheriff said he must have really wanted those items to break into a closed convenience store to get them. Leaving a debit card behind does not absolve you from the theft or committing burglary. The 20-year-old was arrested and booked into Flagler County Jail.
Nah, man, let him cook. Bring him up for that stuff later.
I mean, if he's going to pay for it, you got to charge him interest, but all right.
I'm like, what if he had left behind cash, they wouldn't have known it was him. He had to leave the debit card with his name on it. So they say, oh, yeah, that's the guy who lit his car on fire and then broke into our place. Oh, yeah, we'll just go inventory what's been lost and we'll ring him up. He'll be back for his card this afternoon. Yeah, not how it works.
Yeah, no, that was intentional. I meant to leave it there. I'd come back for it later. Come on, man.
Oh, boy.
Also, again, one of the key components of avoiding being on What Is Wrong With You. Do not return to the scene of the crime and don't commit a crime after committing another crime.
Yeah.
Overlapping here.
They don't learn, do they?
Never.
I'm glad they don't, because we'd have to stop doing this segment if they did. We stay in Florida.
Of course.
Florida Day for our What Is Wrong With You today. We go to Dade City, Florida, where Barry and Susie Court were having their home pressure washed. That sounds awesome. Let me tell you what I've been really into lately on Facebook is videos of dirty rugs being like pressure washed and cleaned.
Okay. I came back from getting my lunch out of the fridge the other day, and I saw Dan watching one of these. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be like, hey, I'm watching you over your shoulder. I was like, why are you watching this?
Because it's very satisfying.
Fair enough.
To see a dirt-covered rug restored to its former glory. I don't know why the Facebook algorithm decided I needed to see those videos, but it was right. Like, hey, good call, algorithm. I love them. Anyhow, Barry and Susie Court were having their home pressure washed, so they moved some things out of the way. Their front porch furniture and window screens. When workers were behind the house, a garbage truck pulled up and put all their furniture in the back of the garbage truck. The courts say they had 4 pieces of outdoor wicker furniture, including a glass top table, 2 antique rocking chairs, and 3 window screens, and the trash collectors took all of it. All they left was the welcome mat. The courts say they immediately reached out to Waste Connections of East Pasco and spoke with customer service. They say they were asked if they had a bulk item pickup request. I said, no, this isn't trash, Susie Court said. If it were trash, it would be next to my trash can. When did the trash company start picking up a whole yard full of furniture? The courts say they were told a supervisor called back, but none did. They kept calling until the company sent out another worker to discuss the situation. He laughed at the courts and didn't offer anything to make this right. So they called News Channel 8 in Florida, and investigators Shannon Bankin reached out to Waste Connections for answers. The court said the cost to replace everything that was thrown away was about $915. Benkin sent invoices for each item to Waste Connections. A spokesperson said this was a simple mistake that happens from time to time. The hell it is.
Absolutely not.
And added that it's the right thing to do to cover these costs and make the courts whole. Bunch of furniture in the front yard. It must be garbage. I don't see a cardboard sign that says free, so it must be trash.
Shays Lounge on the front steps. Throw it in the back. This wins today. That's tremendous. Also, the woman who works for this news station is sending invoices to companies for civil matters.
She's the watchdog. Don't you have? Did you have that guy? I'm sure on the Chicago News when you were a kid. Don't you remember that guy?
We had the I team with Chuck Gowdy, but he wasn't sending invoices.
We had the troubleshooter. Tom Martino was the troubleshooter.
The troubleshooter. Nah, Chuck Gowdy used to like go to the homes of mob members. Be like, hey, yeah, we heard you're the nephew of Joey the Clown Lombardo. By the way, Joey the Clown Lombardo was on the news like every day for 3 years. I swear to God. Organized crime, alive and well. That wins today. Does that beat the plunger attacker?
I think it might.
I think so too.
They threw away all their stuff. Didn't ask. Just pulled up like that looked like garbage to us.
Matt on the YouTube comments did not vote for that story for our daily winner. Matt, I apologize. You've been overruled, but he gave us a great name, Grand Theft Garbage.
Yes.
That is a winning name, and that is our winning story for today. That is tremendous. And what is wrong with you? We'll take a timeout. Tim Fitzgerald's up next on 580 Sports Talk. Last night sure was a big Kansas State victory for the Wildcats as they blew out the TCU Horned Frogs. And to talk all about that matchup and all things K-State, we welcome in our good friend Tim Fitzgerald, publisher of GoPowerCat.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. You can find him on Twitter as well at Life of Fitz. How you doing, Fitz? Did you enjoy last night's big K-State win?
I'm good. It was interesting because it was fairly competitive for a good part of the game. And K-State just really jumped on them in the final minutes and blew that thing open. They looked a little bit more like that K-State team we saw earlier in the year. They kind of found their mojo again as that game wore on.
I felt that was almost surprising K-State won by 21 because it felt like they missed a bunch of shots at the rim. TCU turns teams over a lot, not as badly as K-State was turned over in the first meeting, but it was a little bit of a sloppy game, and yet it also still felt like it was a justified 21-point win because A, TCU looked terrible, and B, K-State was clearly the better team on the floor. What did you feel about the way K-State actually performed relative to how bad TCU looked?
Well, I think it took K-State a while to discover what was working for it. And in the case of personnel, it was Tyke Green, who hasn't played much. I mean, he's gone a number of games without even seeing the court. And he's been noted for playing some pretty good defense. And he came in, and I thought he looked a little uncomfortable at first. Then he kind of settled into some pretty good defense, and rebounding followed. And next thing you know, he's making himself available, cutting to the rim, and getting some dunks. I thought Tyke Green was really the difference in this game. Desi Sills had a nice little burst in there of him getting to the rim, which is his, main part of his game. But I think the insertion of Green to improve the defense and rebounding of the team really played a big role in why K-State started to look pretty good down the stretch.
How big of a role do you think Tyke Green can fill going forward? Is it just going to be, hey, it's matchup specific, but we can certainly rely on him? Or is it more so, hey, maybe we can do a little bit more than we thought with him?
Yeah. They've kind of had four big guys that rotate through those two spots for the most part. Tyke gives them someone that can either come in for Keontae at the three or play up to the four because he's such a big-bodied guy. He was a guard in his previous stop, but he's really more of a defender that can handle bigger guys, and because he can get so physical, and he's a tough matchup, but he's not a huge offensive threat. I mean, he doesn't go out there and pose a lot of shot creating or 3-point shooting. What he does is he gets the ball around the rim and puts it back in the basket, and that's something K-State lacked a little bit of, let alone the fact that his defense and rebounding were very notable.
Our guest is Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com. He joins us every Wednesday here on 580 Sports Talk for the Azure Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up. You can find Fitz and his outstanding staff, all their work at GoPowerCat.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. You can also find Fitz on Twitter, which is currently down at Life of Fitz. Fitz, I wanted to ask about Marquise Noel, who last night set the single-season record for assists at Kansas State, passing Steve Henson and doing so with a whole lot of games to spare. What does that record symbolize, and what will Marquise Noel mean to this program when all is said and done, when his career in Manhattan is over?
It's impressive. I mean, that Steve Henson record stuck around for a long time. I think it's interesting. He played on a team with a guy I keep comparing Keontae Johnson to in Mitch Richmond, and how much easier they can make life for a point guard by having a guy at the three that can drive to the hole or shoot it from the outside. But I think Marquise has gone through an interesting growth this season, and the fact that he's discovered he derives tremendous joy from handing out assists to almost getting addicted to it and forgetting his offense for a little bit and still forcing the ball a little bit too often. He and Keontae had 6 turnovers apiece. 12 of K-State's 15 turnovers came from what you would argue to be the two best players. So, that's something that he still needs to improve and not force it so much. He's really got into trying to force the action a little bit too much.
Is that more about him, or is that also a function of maybe teams guarding him a little differently the second time around in Big 12 play?
Yeah, I think it's both. I mean, at the end of the day, teams are kind of letting him drive and get down in there, and then they cut off his ability to shoot, and he's forced to try to pass it out, and he's finding that there's just aren't the players available that he had earlier in the year, and he hasn't adjusted to that. I mean, I keep saying that. He and Keontae are driving 2 defenses without really knowing what they're doing. And when he's definitive and knows what he's going to do with the ball, or at least have his options, appear before him before he gets himself in the air, he's really effective. But, boy, he gets himself caught up there sometimes.
Again, we're chatting with Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com. It's the Azura Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up. I thought Jerome Tang had an interesting answer in the post-game press conference last night when asked about how his team maintains their edge, the chip on their shoulder moving forward. And it was in a similar vein to the way he answered a lot of other questions last night about how they responded to the loss to Texas with, he says he's not afraid to be a motivator and he's not afraid to be a bad guy and get in his players' face. But at the end of the day, it has to come from the internal motivation of the players. Did you see maybe a switch flip last night? The players maybe taking back a little bit ownership of the chip on their shoulder that was very evident when Big 12 play started and everybody thought they'd finish in the bottom end of the league?
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting question you're asking. And I think Tyke Green did come in and play with a chip on his shoulder, but not necessarily about the opponent, about wanting to prove that he could help this team win and doing it. And I kind of felt that was a source of motivation. I thought his other part of that answer was interesting, that he's willing to be the bad guy every day, but this generation of players don't want or need that. And you can only play the bad guy so many times a year before they kind of acclimate to it and brush it off, and it's no longer effective. I thought that was really interesting, and I think you could tell that he got after his team a little bit. They found out that the coach, who is a lot of fun and makes basketball fun, and when he's unhappy, you're going to know it. It's not all fun and games, and I think they responded to it. Now, really what I want to see now is they got back-to-back road games here with Texas Tech and Oklahoma. Can they go take care of business? These are winnable games on the road, and if you win these games, it really puts you in a really strong position, because all of their road games, despite how tough the Big 12 is, would fall under the winnable category. All four remaining are against the four bottom teams, so to speak, of the Big 12, although Oklahoma State is climbing out of that status that's down there with the other three, but they still got to go to Lubbock and Norman and Stillwater and Morgantown, and those are all winnable games. And I think what might decide the fate of this team and how they're seeded in the Big 12 tournament is if they can find that motivation to be the better team, because you got to have it every game in this conference, because anyone can beat you on any night.
How many losses do you think the Big 12 champion or champions end up with at the end of this basketball season? What's the number that feels right to you?
Yeah, it's kind of 5 sticks out to me right now, because you look around the conference and some of the teams that still have, are still really strong records, like in Iowa State. Well, they got to still come to Kansas State. They got to go some places where, you would typically lose. And if you're Iowa State, typically they're not nearly as good away from home. So I think a lot of teams are in for more losses. I think Kansas State potentially could be a 5-loss team at the end of the season, even though they're 7-4 right now in conference play, just because of the way the schedule falls. The toughest teams are coming into Bramlage, and the most winnable games on the road remain for this team. They got a lot of their really tough games out of the way on the road earlier in the year.
We're chatting with Tim Fitzgerald, publisher of GoPowerCat.com, the best source for all things Kansas State Wildcats athletics. It's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. You can find Fitz as well on Twitter at Life of Fitz. If Twitter's working for you, it really isn't for anyone right now. And, of course, go check out GoPowerCat for all your K-State needs. Fitz, if K-State finishes with 5 losses in Big 12 play, and let's say that's at least a 2-way tie for the league title. So that's, close to best case scenario at this point. What do you think that would lead to in terms of seeding NCAA tournament wise?
Yeah, I mean, if they finish really strong here with only a couple more losses, I think K-State will be in the top 4 seeds, top 16 seeds overall, on the top 4 seeds in the region, as will a good chunk of the Big 12, which is absolutely remarkable. It's going to be kind of a mess for the committee to get everyone spread across the United States in a position where they're not going to play too early in the tournament. But yeah, I think unless someone collapses here down the stretch, and maybe that's TCU without Mike Miles, but I wouldn't want to be facing TCU as a 6th seed in the tournament. I know that. So I think everyone's going to be very highly seeded going into the tournament, which gives you a big advantage.
All right, I'm going to give you a list here, Fitz. It's all 8 sites for the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. I'm going to ask you which one you would most like to go to. You can come up with your own criteria, okay? Ease of travel, where K-State will have the most fans, party scene. You can use your own criteria here. So you've got Des Moines, Denver, Columbus, Ohio, Albany, New York. I'm sure that's at the top of the list. Sacramento, Orlando, or Birmingham, Alabama.
I feel like you're missing one.
I'm sorry. Greensboro, North Carolina is the other one. My mistake.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's any doubt that my choice there would probably be Denver for very personal reasons. But it is also easy to drive to. A lot of K-State fans get there, or Des Moines. And with teams like Iowa State and Kansas also in good positions this year, I would think Des Moines might be more where they end up. I can rule out Albany as a place I want to go to in March. K-State's been to Sacramento not too long ago for the tournament, so I think it's only fair that they get to go somewhere else. Orlando would be nice. It's not cheap to go there. The airfare is probably pretty high. But I have covered the NCAA tournament in Orlando. I'll take anything to North Carolina. That's fine, but I'm not blown away by the list this year. Let's be honest here. I think there's some disappointing stops on that road to the Final Four if you're a team, and we'll just see where they end up. Usually, K-State will get sent to the Anchorage regional or the Fargo sub-regional and shipped out. But like the year they had to play in the first 4 in Dayton and 2 days later play in Sacramento, that was lovely of the NCAA to do that to K-State.
Or where was it in 19? Was it San Jose that they got sent to as a 4 seed in 2019?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they had to play in San Jose against
Great draw.
Against a team from the state of California.
Yeah,
too.
awesome.
So that was particularly cool. Fitz, I suspect your personal reasons for wanting a Denver regional and mine are very different, but we're the same.
Okay, yeah.
I assume Fitz just wanted to go meet Mr. and Mrs. Lucero. I'm sure that's what it was, Fitz.
They're big Tim Fitzgerald fans.
The need for Denver, honestly, is lessened right now by political happenings in Missouri, but I still enjoy Denver quite a bit.
Hopefully that is where K-State ends up, or Des Moines. Then we can all drive. We'll all drive together. Let's rent a minivan. We'll carpool with the Go PowerCat folks.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Like, we'll get one of those like Sprinter vans.
Yeah.
And I'll be inside of it with no windows. And we just emerge like, we are here to kick ass with coverage. I'll
Fitz,
go take a nap.
Real quick, we've got about 20 seconds here. Does K-State win this weekend over Tech?
Yeah, I think they do. I'll be down there with Zach Carlson. Tech put a pretty good fight with them in Manhattan, but that was kind of the beginning of K-State not playing as well as they can. And I think they're not back to where they were, but I think last night they showed they're capable of playing at a higher level.
Tim Fitzgerald is the publisher of GoPowerCat.com. Go check it out for all your K-State needs. It's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. He's on Twitter as well if the website ever comes back up to full functionality at Life of Fitz, and he joins us every Wednesday for the Azure Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up. As always, Fitz, we appreciate the time. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, I'm going to call my friend Elon and see what's going on here.
That is Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com. 5 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk is coming up next. Hey now, 1 hour to go on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero, the crew here with you for the next hour. Appreciate you stopping by and spending some of your afternoon hours with us. Want to give a big thanks to Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com for joining us for the Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up last hour. If you missed any of that or any of our show at all up until this point, head to our website, 580WIBW.com. Hover over the podcasts tab and then click on 580 Sports Talk to find the hour-by-hour breakdown of the show. Coming up here in this 5 o'clock hour, we will get to our headlines here in just a moment. We've got some college basketball best bets for you and a look ahead to the Big 12 schedule for tonight and a little more Super Bowl talk as well. Don't forget, you can comment on the YouTube stream. Sports on 580 WIBW is our YouTube channel. And you can also hit us up on the Big O Tires text line. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. Let's get right into it, Dan. Our 580 Sports Talk headlines for today, brought to you, as always, by Blue Dot of Kansas. Ask them about their peak performance safety check when they will check your furnace, your AC, and your plumbing all once a year, all for just one low price. You can find them online at blue.kansas.com. First headline for me, it's a good one for the Kansas City Chiefs. Andy Reid said earlier today, as you heard on Mic'd Up with Jake and Fulton, or I suppose just Fulton when Andy Reid's audio was playing. But he said that every member of the active roster was expected to participate in some form or fashion today. We do not have an official injury report as of yet, or at least out right now, but everybody who is on the active roster getting out there and in some way being able to participate is awesome. That includes Juju Smith-Schuster. That includes Kadarius Toney. That includes L'Jarius Sneed, who has cleared the concussion protocol. Also, Willie Gay would have been listed as a questionable participant last week. Not sure exactly how full he was able to go today, but we should find out here soon. We do not have an official listing yet for either team, but if it comes out before the end of the show, we will get that to you. But on the Chiefs injury front, really good news as of today.
Yeah, that's good to hear for those wide receivers in particular, that they are trending towards playing, and that L'Jarius Sneed's out of concussion protocol. You want to be healthy going into the Super Bowl, at least as healthy as you're capable of being. And with the unfortunate exception of McCole Hardman, looks like the Chiefs are going to be in really good shape. And Mahomes says he's feeling good on the ankle. That's a big deal.
We also do have an update for the Eagles. 3 players listed as limited, all with an injury/rest, same as last week. Cam Jurgens, reserve. Lane Johnson, starting tackle. And Avonte Maddox, starting cornerback for the Eagles. So injured, but also a restful approach. Honestly, and maybe I'm an idiot for this take. I'm an idiot in general, but maybe for this take as well. I would imagine if you've been playing in every single game this year, you've been starting every game this year, you know the game plan, you know the scheme, you know the expectations. Do you really need a ton of practice if you're injured going into the Super Bowl? Like, do you think Avonte Maddox and Lane Johnson really need to be out on the practice field all that much this week?
Not unless they're doing something like dramatically different in the game plan that they need to go rep.
But even for a guy like Lane Johnson's 100 years old. Like, I feel like he will probably be okay just being in meetings and being in game planning sessions and doing walkthroughs to be able to still have a grasp of what's going on. Also, and I don't mean to say this as a put down of offensive linemen, because offensive linemen are some of the smartest players on the field, football IQ wise. But I imagine at some point it's just, hey, you have to know what Frank Clark is doing, or if Chris Jones is split out on your side, you have to know what he's doing. I mean, do you need many reps getting ready for that, or do you just need to know? I mean, Lane Johnson has seen it all at this point. I don't know. I'm not a coach for a reason, but I imagine those guys in particular, Maddox and Johnson, will probably be okay with limited practice time this week.
First Blue Dot of Kansas headline for me, it was the dominant sports story from the world of sports last night. The NBA has a new career leading scorer. It is LeBron Ramon James, 38,390 career points for LeBron as he passed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's 38-year-old NBA career scoring record. It came, for the record, with a pull-up jumper from the left elbow with 10 seconds to play in the third quarter of what hilariously ended up being a 3-point Lakers loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder in Los Angeles. LeBron's family was there to witness it, as was the man whose record was broken, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, one of the all-time greats of the game. The game was stopped with 10 seconds left in the third. A brief ceremony was held. LeBron James said the F word on live television. I'm sure it was all great. I never actually got to see it live. I was covering Kansas State basketball. Anyhow, LeBron James, drafted into the league in 2003, has not only matched the expectations set for him all the way back to his junior year in high school when he appeared for the first time in our public consciousness and on the cover of Sports Illustrated and on ESPN as a basketball prodigy. He has arguably exceeded them, now the all-time career scoring leader, and with a chance truly to put that record well beyond reach. I never thought anyone was going to catch Kareem because he was such a marvel to be playing into his early 40s as he did. LeBron's 38 and still averaging 30 points a game and still has a chance to put up some big numbers into the future. He's expressed the goal of wanting to play with his son, who will be potentially draft eligible in another year. Play with his son, Bronny, in an NBA game. We'll see if all of that happens, but everything else that could have happened for LeBron James in his career did happen. It is one of the rarest stories of boundless potential, not just met, but exceeded in sports history. It's a truly singular and remarkable career. There's never really been one like him. And another mark, another addition to the legacy of one of the truly great athletes in history, LeBron James.
Unfortunately for him, when it comes to being a basketball player, there's only one thing that really matters, and that is your shoe game. And unfortunately, LeBron has failed in that regard. His shoes are not cool. And frankly, they never really have been. So unfortunately, he drops down a peg there. I'm kidding. Well, his shoes actually really haven't been that good. Although I'm looking at them right now. The LeBron 1, not bad. Everything since, not great. I'm just kidding about that. If you think he's the greatest basketball player of all time, it's not really worth arguing about it because there's as many points as you could possibly want to point to that. If you say, well, he's not Michael Jordan, that's fine. There's an endless number of points you could point to about why Michael Jordan might be the best. I am in the camp that having that argument for the 9 billionth time is really stupid.
It's tiresome. You're not going to change anybody's mind. If you saw Jordan and think he's the greatest, then you think Jordan's the greatest. If you live through the 80s and believe it's Magic or it's Larry, or if you're from a generation before that, you think it's Kareem, which I honestly think that Kareem's got maybe a better argument than people give him credit for. And I'm glad that Kareem is back in the consciousness now, because if there is someone close to LeBron, it's probably Kareem. Lou Alcindor did not lose a high school game, I don't believe. If he did, it was only one. Then, of course, he had to go to college, 3 national titles. And then he went to the NBA and won 6 rings and 6 MVPs and was great into his late 30s in a way that really only LeBron has been. And that's kind of why it's fitting that these two guys now stand 1-2 in all-time scoring. But you're not going to change anybody's mind. I know this. I'm 36 years old. I didn't see 80s Jordan. I didn't see young, come fly with me Jordan. I didn't see couldn't win in the postseason Jordan. I saw champion Jordan. I saw never lost a finals Jordan. I saw the fully formed version of Michael Jordan that dominated the NBA in the 1990s. So that's the Jordan that I have in my consciousness. I saw LeBron's entire career. I've been fortunate enough to have seen LeBron from the start. I actually got to see him live his rookie year. Was able to see him play in Denver against the Nuggets. And of course, I was probably an early stage, I don't want to say a hater at that stage, but, you know, the Nuggets had their guy in the 2003 class. They had Carmelo Anthony. So I was a Melo guy and not a LeBron guy. And as it went with LeBron, his greatness became pretty undeniable, even if the all-time stature maybe looked like it might elude him. There were no titles the first go around in Cleveland. That loss in the 2011 finals is a clunker, an all-time clunker for a great player. And he didn't come out of that looking good either. And I'll admit to feeling a certain level of schadenfreude when LeBron fell short with that Heat team in 2011. Because if you weren't a Heat fan or a LeBron fan, or Dwayne Wade fan, the way that all came together left maybe a sour taste in your mouth. But when it came all the way back around to him winning as an underdog in Cleveland, coming back from 3-1 down to beat that Golden State team in the finals, I think at that point, if you were hating on LeBron, you were just being a hater for being a hater's sake. There was nothing left that you could deny with his greatness on the court. LeBron's played in 8 finals, only won 4 of them. That's the trump card that people in the Jordan is the GOAT camp like to play. But also, Jordan was the favorite in all those 6 finals. Like, he had by far the best team. The only one that was close was probably 91 against the aging Lakers. And even then, you felt like the Bulls probably should have won that series in retrospect, and they blew the Lakers out of the water. LeBron was favored in 4, maybe 5, if you're being generous, of those 8 NBA finals. He lost one he was a favorite in. He also won one he was an underdog in.
You know, if the whole like concept to the point of it just becoming a joke and like the go-to, what should we bring up to fill time on national sports talk programming? LeBron versus MJ debate. Like, if we actually had ignored that for decades and like when LeBron retired, had that discussion, there probably would be some intrigue to it. Like, it would actually be, hey, Michael won all of them. LeBron didn't, but, you know, look at these storylines. Look who he had to play with in Cleveland during his first tenure there. Look at those rosters. His second best player was Zydrunas Ilgauskas for a couple years. Like,
Eric Snow.
It was in abomination.
Michael Williams.
LeBron has the counting stats because he has played forever and
been incredibly durable.
I mean, the only time he's ever broken down is in his late 30s. Is he in his late 30s? How old is he?
38.
38. Okay, yeah. He's in his late 30s now. That's the only time he's really had any time when he's broken down. That's amazing.
Him and Kareem, very similar in that way.
Whereas Michael has he still has the points per game all-time record, which probably isn't going to be passed. But LeBron probably a better passer than, like, there's actual intrigue to it, but it is such a tired thing that, look, at this point, if you have to pick apart every single hair and every single knit, well, he's number 1, but Michael's number 2 and it's real close, or vice versa. That's just a waste of your time.
Yeah.
They're both all-time greats. The game is completely different. Just appreciate that I don't even like LeBron James, but how do you argue that he's not incredible?
Like, there's only ever been one of him.
Right.
Exactly. That's the thing. Like, there's only ever been one Kareem, and there's only ever been one Larry Bird, and there was only ever one Michael Jordan, and there's only ever been one Magic Johnson, and there's only ever been one LeBron James, which answers the question of, what if we took Magic Johnson and we gave him a better jump shot, and also we made him the fastest and strongest guy on the court for 20 years? What if we did that? That's LeBron, because he's still the fastest guy, and he's still the strongest guy, and he's still a good shooter. You could see last night his ability to make those pull-up jump shots. He decided he was going to go get the record tonight, and he did it. It's just been so amazing to watch the things that he has done against the pressure of being expected to be that guy. And he embraced it, and he wanted that. Like, he got King James and Chosen One tattooed on himself in high school. He understood the burden that he was carrying, and he wanted that, and he burned to be great in the face of those expectations, and he accomplished it. The other thing that I think is fascinating about LeBron James, I think he's maybe the most human of our sports legends. Like, there are very few guys that are in the pantheon, right, of sports legends. Like, guys only need one name, or their nickname. Like, all the guys we're talking about right now in the NBA are there. There's just
Kareem,
yeah,
MJ. MJ's got a million of them. LeBron, yeah.
Like, there's only but a handful of those guys. MJ always felt like very unattainable, right? Like, there was nothing about.
But still to this day.
Yeah, but there was nothing about him that you could embrace. Like, personally, he felt like a god walking the earth. He felt less like a man and more like a god. And maybe that's me being, 10 years old and seeing him just kill teams every single night, win 72 games.
I think a lot of people shared that feeling, though.
Yeah, like the way I do think, in a sense, he was deified during his playing career and even after his playing career. With LeBron, we've watched him grow up in a way that we don't typically get to watch athletes grow up. We don't see, like, football players. We don't really get a glimpse of them in high school. and then their careers are shorter anyway. So we don't see their lives on display in the way that we have seen LeBron James's life on display as he grew up, as he got married, as he had children, as he raised his kids, and as they became basketball prospects in his own right, as he became comfortable with being a front-facing public figure and speaking up on issues and things that mattered to him. Is he batting 1,000 in that department? No. There have been some public missteps. There have been some things that he has said, some things that he has done that do not have a 100% approval rating. But that's part of being human, right? Part of being human is you don't get it right all the time. Part of being human is being willing to say something that might be unpopular rather than, well, I'm just trying to sell shoes here, which was kind of Michael Jordan's public persona for a very long time. Part of the reason he felt a little less human than LeBron James does. I think that's what makes LeBron ultimately embraceable and so easy to appreciate as he reaches these milestones, is that when I think about LeBron James, I think about that time that he posted on Instagram, that picture of himself just grinning ear to ear in his pool, and he captioned it, "Smiling through it all. Can't believe this is my life." Like, would Michael Jordan have ever posted something like that?
No,
would Kareem, would Larry, would maybe Magic, but like
LeBron is core is a corny nerd.
But
like if he
human,
6'8" and built like a rhinoceros, he would be like a doofus.
But that's human.
No, I agree. I agree with
that.
you.
That's what I came to appreciate about LeBron, getting beyond the not liking the decision or rooting for that Heat team to lose in 2011.
That was 13 years ago.
That sure was. And he's still like this good.
Yeah.
Like this undeniably good at basketball, this much better than his peers. It may not be his league anymore in the sense that maybe he's not the best player in the league anymore. Maybe that's Giannis. Maybe that's my guy, Nikola Jokic. Maybe that's
it is, by the way.
Yes,
it is Jokic.
It is Nikola Jokic. Yes, correct. I'm glad we see eye to
yeah,
eye
that's not me being like your friend. Well, I am, but like that's not me being your friend. He is number one.
But no, I think that for LeBron to have had the life in the public eye that he has had and maintain his humanity for warts and all is just as remarkable as anything he's done on the basketball court. And I hope he gets a chance to play with his kid. I don't know how that's all going to work out, but I kind of want that for him. I think that would be like the last kind of capstone, the thing that he wants to achieve. He has achieved everything he ever wanted to achieve in basketball. If he can go ahead and achieve that one more thing, it would be pretty neat, I think. And so that's what I'm rooting for. That's what's left to root for as he continues to put this scoring record further and further out of reach as it goes.
You know, he had that quote the other day about how he wishes he could just go to Starbucks and get his name on a cup like a normal person. Like he wishes he could just go do normal person things at times. And I think a lot of people said, I get it. A lot of people also made fun of him for it because you've got everything you could ever want. How could you want these, normal peon things? But there is probably a degree of not trouble. What word am I looking for? But it's kind of unfortunate. I would imagine that your entire adult life has A, been in the spotlight, and B, you've just been compared to another person who was never like your best friend. Like, by all accounts, Michael doesn't hate LeBron, but not exactly warm and welcoming to him either. Like, that's got to be hard, right? Like, imagine if, in our line of work, every single time I step behind a microphone, someone's like, yeah, Kevin Harlan doesn't sound like that. Yeah, that was pretty good. That was a good game, but, Joe Buck did it better. Like, that would suck. That would be really tough.
So, to be constantly compared to the highest standard. But I think that the way that he has handled it and maintained his humanity and maintained his class and his grace and maintained the ability to be somebody that if your 8-year-old wanted his jersey, you could buy him a LeBron jersey and feel good about that because you knew that LeBron was going to turn up in TMZ, out 2 a.m. driving drunk or making bad decisions. Like this was and has been somebody who has maintained that status as a role model and maintained that status as one of the all-time greats. So it's cool to see him get his flowers. It's always fascinating that it feels like he's not as revered by his peers as Kobe is.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. I think Kobe, I think Kobe his work ethic is what is lionized as it's gone. And I don't think people look at LeBron in the same way in terms of his work ethic or his killer instinct or whatever it is. But it will be interesting to see how much of the next generation, like Josh Giddey after the game last night for the Thunder, he said, LeBron was my favorite player growing up. Well, Josh Giddey's like 12. Josh Giddey's a super young guy. So there's a generation of guys that are going to be coming into the game, and LeBron will have been their guy. And how LeBron's influence in the league, how that lasts, and what shape that takes, and what shape his influence after he's an active player takes.
No, that is a fascinating point. And we won't know that for a while, but no, that is absolutely something that's worth keeping an eye on. And again, I've never been a LeBron fan by any means, but I think it's okay to be like, I don't like the guy, or I don't like off the court stuff, or I think Michael Jordan's better or whatever, and still say that guy's pretty freaking incredible.
But when was the game, the moment that you realized that, like, okay, this guy is going to be one of the, if not the guy, when it's all said and done?
See, for me, it wasn't actually a game. It was nothing he actually did on the court. It was 7 years of me saying I hated the guy and then throwing something against the wall when he didn't pick my team at the decision. Seriously, like, my two best friends and I were sitting in my basement watching the decision on TV, and after 24 hours of, oh my God, it's going to be the Bulls. That was the rumor going into it, was he was going to pick Chicago, and then he didn't. I was like, God, I hate this guy. He's a fraud. And I was like, in retrospect, I would have rooted for him like nobody's business that he picked my team instead of someone else. And I ended up like, that probably should have been a sign that I kind of already knew, even at immature and 16 years old. Yeah, he's pretty special.
I remember watching the 07 Eastern Conference Finals, or semifinals maybe, when he scored the 25 consecutive points, 29 of the last 30 for his team. Crazy. In an overtime win over the Pistons, and just realizing, oh, they're not going to be able to do anything with him. Like this is what it's going to be for him when he decides to take over games and then shut it down. Like, because he was in his early 20s at that point. Like, this is just what the league is going to be.
Yeah.
Special player, and again, a really cool moment in Los Angeles last night.
One more quick headline for me from the college sports world on our 580 Sports Talk headlines, brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. 6 players between KU and K-State got invites to the NFL Scouting Combine. 4 from K-State. Not a surprise with any of them. Deuce Vaughn, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, Julius Brents, and Malik Knowles. By the way, Julius Brents, I don't know where I would have thought he would get picked when he announced that he was entering the draft, or when he ran out of eligibility, whatever it was. I don't remember what year he was. He's going to go higher than that in the draft. He was probably the standout superstar of the defensive players at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, I ton of social media buzz around him.
I'm going to guess day 2. He's going to be a day 2 pick.
I think so too. I think he'll go in the first 3 rounds.
Which,
big physical corner, like I think with some speed. I think teams are going to look at him and say, "Hey, we can build a secondary around pieces like this."
That should be 3 guys for K-State taken in the top 3 rounds. I think Felix has a real chance at late round 1, certainly early round 2. I think Brent's is going to be a day 2 guy, and I think Deuce Vaughn's a day 2 guy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think it might be closer to 4th or 5th for Deuce. I think it'll be early day 3. Just because, I mean, you never know. You never know with running backs, right?
Yeah.
It's not the size thing. I think teams can look past that because he's so productive in college. I think it's just the running back thing.
Yeah, that's fair.
And you never know. Like, there might be a run on running backs, and a team in the 3rd round might be like, uh-oh, we might lose out on our guy, and our guy is Deuce Vaughn, and we got to go get him.
Yeah.
But yeah, it feels like more 4th or 5th round for Deuce, and that is not a knock, because that means I have said many times, he's going to have a very good pro career.
The other 2 for KU, Earl Bostic, the super senior offensive tackle. I think he'll be a late round pick. I think you could get him as maybe project as a swing tackle. He's got a ton of experience. And then Lonnie Phelps, who I think is a super wild card. They have him listed as a linebacker. He's too small to play 4-3 defensive end in the NFL, because if he tries to put on weight, he's going to get too slow. He's a little too much of a tweener, I think. I think if you could get his body in the prime condition, I think he could be a decent rotational pass rusher as a 3-4 outside linebacker. So good for those 2 guys from KU. Good for those 4 guys from K-State as well. Do you have any other headlines for today?
No, I think we can keep it moving.
Then that will send us to a commercial break. When we come back on the other side of this timeout, we'll get to some college basketball coming up tonight. 3 games in the Big 12. Some best bets as well for me outside the Big 12. We'll talk about that next here on 580 Sports Talk. This is up there with one of my favorite bumps we have in the system.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Love Del the Funky Homo Sapien. Brendan and Dan here with you, along with Del the Funky Homo Sapien, here on 580 Sports Talk, 580 WIBW, 580WIBW.com, as well as on our Sports on 580 WIBW YouTube channel. 3 Big 12 games on the schedule tonight in the college hoops world. Iowa State at West Virginia, Texas Tech at Oklahoma State, Oklahoma at Baylor. Most interesting spread and amount bet on a game tonight. Iowa State at West Virginia. West Virginia is favored by 4 at home. They're playing really well right now. Their best basketball of the year by far. In fact, it might have even gotten to 4.5 at some places. Have also seen that a lot of money on West Virginia as a 4-point favorite. 72% of the bets, 58% of the money coming in on WVU tonight.
Well, people have paid attention to what Iowa State looks like on the road, I think is what that says. And maybe people are looking at West Virginia and seeing that they're a better team than their record suggests, according to every metric. I think that 3.5 spread is too small.
Interesting.
Personally. I think West Virginia is going to win tonight.
Spicy. Is that one of your best bets for tonight?
That is one of my best bets for tonight.
Let's go.
That is one of my best bets for tonight. Yeah, I got West Virginia covering that 3.5.
Other games from the league, anything stand out to you about either Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, or OU Baylor? Feel like that's a game Oklahoma State has to win.
Yeah.
They should, but I think they have to.
They're like no easy games, like we said in the Big 12, but the closest thing to it right now is Texas Tech because they're not really whole. They're dealing with injuries, and they haven't really won when they've been healthy either. So, that is a game Oklahoma State's got to win. They're starting to kind of secure their spot maybe in the NCAA tournament. So By the way, that's West Virginia spread up to 4.5 now.
4.5. Wow.
Yeah, went up 4.5 now. Oklahoma Baylor. Baylor's a 9.5 point favorite, I believe. I'm double checking that. It's 8.5 now. It looks like it's actually gone down. Baylor minus 8.5.
I don't know why I still feel like Oklahoma is a difficult team. Like, they clearly have not been very good, but then they also blew out Alabama.
They did. That's their only win in their last 5, and they massacred a top 5 team. Just absolutely gave them the work. And then they went to Morgantown and lost by 1 billion on Saturday. I have no idea what to make of Oklahoma whatsoever. I know they're going to play hard for Porter Moser. I like the total in that game. That's another one of my best bets for tonight. I like the total over 140.5.
Over one. All right. So what's the spread? 8.5 points.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be somewhere in the neighborhood of Baylor 74-66 or so, 75-66.
Yeah. Something in that neighborhood. That feels about right to me.
Interesting. I would not touch that spread with a 100-foot pole.
Yeah.
I
don't love the spread at all, but the total I think is where the action is for Oklahoma Baylor.
By the way, speaking of Baylor basketball, CJ Moore, nothing but bangers. Every piece he puts out is a home run. He's got another feature up at The Athletic. We'll talk to him about it tomorrow, about Jonathan Chamwa and his return from injury. I mean, the injury he suffered last year against Texas, horrifying. I mean, every ligament in his knee was destroyed, and he had a severed nerve. He could not feel he had 2 surgeries, one to repair the ligaments and one to repair the nerve. After the first surgery, he said he couldn't feel his foot. He couldn't move his leg, and he could not feel his left foot. And in a year, he's back to playing Big 12 basketball. They thought he might never play basketball again. He was worried he might never walk normally again without a limp. He's playing Big 12 basketball in a year. It is absolutely astounding. So we'll talk to CJ about that tomorrow. Taking a look at the bracket matrix right now, by the way, while we're on the Big 12 kick. Right now, Oklahoma State is an aggregate 11 seed. And I explained this yesterday, and I love this website. It's just bracketmatrix.com. If you're interested in the bracketology and the projections of where teams will go in the NCAA tournament, they have 105 different bracketology entries right now, from big places like CBS and ESPN to computer science classes at the University of Illinois to just bloggers around the internet who submit it and they get entered in. Oklahoma State right now is an 11 seed. They are currently projected to be a play-in team. They're one of the second 2 11 seeds. So they would play, I think it would be Nevada or Clemson in the tournament if this came to fruition. But only 84 of the 105 brackets have them in. I think they're going to be a very interesting bubble team coming down the stretch. Or do you think they're solidly in?
I think they should be in. I think that's a good team. They did lose Avery Anderson though for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's tough.
That's troublesome. He, preseason first team all league guy, really important glue piece in that backcourt. Not a huge scorer, but consistent 11 points a game for a team that doesn't have a ton of offense. It's going to be hard to replace.
Not a great non-conference schedule, but not awful. 14-9 overall, number 7 defense in the country, according to KenPom. Yeah, they're probably in. They're probably solidly in. For what it's worth, and I mentioned this yesterday, it's been updated since, but KU is still a 1. Bracket Matrix has them as the lowest 1 seed. They've got K-State currently as the highest 4 seed, if you are into that kind of thing. My best bets for you, by the way, for today, one of them has moved since I physically made the bet earlier this afternoon. This is going to sound, neither of mine are Big 12. In fact, these are weird. I'm going to be honest with you. These are weird. Notre Dame is favored by 1.5 on the road at Georgia Tech. I would not have picked that game in a million years, but there is being bet on the Notre Dame spread in that game. Like, not even half of the total bets overall, but over half the money has come in on Notre Dame. So the wise guys know something. I'm going to take Notre Dame in that one minus 1.5. That's down to a 0.5 point.
Yeah, it's a pick 'em essentially now.
That's weird, but I'm going to stick with my Notre Dame pick. Also, I got some more America East basketball for you. Mid-major pick of the day. Give me Vermont minus 8 at Maine.
You love the Catamounts.
I do love the Catamounts. So if you're interested in playing some of those are our best bets for today. Dan's got West Virginia on the spread, Oklahoma and Baylor over the total.
Yeah, West Virginia minus 4.5. I liked it better at 3.5, but it's moved to 4.5. So I'd still play it. And then over 140.5 for Oklahoma Baylor.
And I've got Notre Dame -1.5, but that spread's even smaller now, so I'm still taking Notre Dame. And then Vermont from the America East -8 if you want to play along tonight.
We all have our systems when we bet, from picking the perfect upset to combing through injury reports the night before the game. But there's one thing every bettor should include in their system, and that's the responsible gaming tools available on FanDuel Sportsbook. These tools help keep your play in check and under control. Tools like time limits, so you don't unknowingly spend more time on the app than you intended. Wager limits to help prevent you from betting more than you should. And you can even take a timeout, which pauses your account for as long as you may need. FanDuel wants every bettor's experience to be about fun and entertainment. So visit FanDuel.com/playwell and make responsible gaming tools a part of your system. You must be 21 and present in Kansas to play FanDuel. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com.
Just perusing through KenPom and looking at the overall strength of schedule this year. KU is number one. They've got KU as the number one toughest schedule in the country. Oklahoma is 3, West Virginia, Baylor, Oklahoma State, all in the top 10. K-State is 20th in the country for overall toughest schedule, and that's with non-conference in the 200s. TCU has the 34th toughest schedule in the country because they have the 332nd ranked non-conference schedule. I like Jamie Dixon. I like the way TCU plays. I like Mike Miles. I hope he's back as soon as possible. I hope Eddie Lampkin is healthy as soon as possible. You are a good enough program now, and you're in the toughest country in America. You can schedule tougher opponents. Please find a legitimate non-conference opponent next year. I'm begging.
By the way, that number for West Virginia, Iowa State just moved back to 3.5.
Okay.
Like, as I was holding my phone in my hand.
Somebody who is listening to the show is a big money bettor. And just
swung the line.
Dan Lucero's picking West Virginia. Give me the clones. Down a hundo on that right now. We're going to take a timeout on 580 Sports Talk. Got a question from Matt in the YouTube comments we'll address along with some other NFL talk coming up after this on 580 Sports Talk. 6:45 on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you. Thanks so much for stopping by the show today. Coming up tomorrow, full guest list for you. We've got Rick Peterson from TopSports.news for the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Round. We'll have crosstalk with Jake tomorrow, I believe. Jake's on deck.
It's his day, yeah.
All right, so we'll talk to Jake tomorrow at 4. CJ Moore at 4:30. A lot to get to in the Big 12 basketball breakdown brought to you by 23rd Street Brewery. And Mitch Holtis is going to stop by as well for our weekly conversation brought to you by Hy-Vee and Azura Credit Union. We'll get Mitch's final thoughts on his third Super Bowl broadcast in 4 years. So cool for Mitch. So we'll talk all about the matchup coming up tomorrow. A couple things I wanted to get to here real quick before we get to a little more Super Bowl talk. One comment in from Matt on the Sports on 580 WIBW YouTube comments. Appreciate everyone watching along today. Asks, will anyone from the sports crew be attending the draft this year in Kansas City? I'm hoping to. I'm hoping to attend the draft. Will we get credentialed for it? I don't know. Just
who can say?
Yeah, do a little inside baseball look. Hard to know. Sometimes the NFL little stingy with those. We'll find out. I'm hopefully going to be there. If not, they're covering it. I will at least be going the third day of the draft. That's kind of the open, like, just hang out day because the picks come in fast and it's much more of a relaxed environment.
You don't have a bunch of people trying to get on television.
Right. So I will be there day 3 for sure. That's the Saturday of the event. Hoping to be working there the first couple days, but again, we'll find out.
Yeah.
Hard to know.
We'll see how that goes.
I didn't get his name. I don't know where he's from. I don't know where he's listening from. If you're listening today, let me know on the Big O Tires text line or in the YouTube comments. Walking through the parking lot last night after the game. So I'm not used to the parking lot after sporting events for KU or K-State.
Right.
Because like every KU game, I don't leave until 2 hours after the game.
Yeah, I'm
covering them.
I left at 12:30. I left at like 11:30 last night. My car was the last one on the lot.
Yeah,
that's what we're used to.
Yeah, so I'm, when I go to Royals games, I think, God, I hate this. I hate this so much. There's cars, there's traffic. As I'm used to going as a fan. Or even if I'm going to a KU game as a fan, I live within walking distance. Like, that's a
different deal.
So we're walking through the parking lot last night. Abby and I are just talking, and I'm not really paying attention. I hear someone, 10 feet in front of me, not even 10 feet in front of me, off to my left, say, "Hey," and I look up, and he goes, "Are you on 580 Sports Talk?" I said, "Yes." And he comes up and shakes my hand. I listen all the time. Love your show, man. Like, hey, thanks. I should have asked for his name.
Yeah.
Or like if he was a K-State student or if he just, lives in Manhattan or lives nearby or what. But I was like, hey, thanks for listening, man. That was cool. That made my night.
Hey, that's the advantage of the YouTube. Now we got a little bit of facial recognition when we go out.
Yeah, now you know what I look like.
Yeah, exactly. We can't.
That's what it looks like.
We're not hiding our. You can put faces to the voices.
I have over the course of the last calendar year, and I love this, and this is a shout out to you for listening on the other side of these microphones. I have had someone in the line at the Chick-fil-A, someone at a random tailgate where I was meeting some friends before KU's first Saturday game of this football season, and now the parking lot at Bramlage Coliseum. I'll say, hey, love the show. That's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah,
thank you that's why I mean it. Thank you. Appreciate you for listening.
Hell yeah.
That's like not the thing I ever thought about when I thought I want to be on the radio for a living. It's never like, ooh, people are going to come talk to me. Like, that's never what I thought of. I just like talking about sports. But no, it is really cool. Appreciate you guys for being a part of that.
And it's I like hearing those stories too, because it's like that line from the movie Singles: a compliment for us is a compliment for you.
Right.
So a compliment for Brendan is a compliment for me.
Yes, and to follow up in the YouTube comments as well. If you guys are at the draft this year, again, I'll be there day 3. Come hang out. Come hang out with me. My older sister went when it was in Chicago. I think the second time it was in Chicago before they started traveling around the country with it. And she went on day 3 when, again, there's like football media celebrities, so to speak, walking around. Again, it's kind of casual. Like Adam Schefter's just walking around, like just hanging out. Not that I really want to go hang out with Adam Schefter.
Annie Agar is doing a TikTok
right behind me. I'm in it. Yeah. So yeah, if you're at the draft this year, let us know. We'll meet up. We'll say hi. I really meant it earlier today when we were talking about Patrick Mahomes and the doofy tweet from Elliott Shore Parks before Twitter completely broke, where he said, if you were building a quarterback from scratch, you'd be more like Jalen Hurts than Patrick Mahomes. That is ridiculous, by the way. Like, that's not even remotely close to true. And every single general manager, personnel member, scout, everyone in the whole league would tell you that's not true. But it really did. I really do appreciate it because it did make me think about how I'm evaluating this matchup. I really thought I was going to pick the Eagles. For a week and a half, I really thought the Eagles have too much depth. It's Jimmys and Joes over X's and O's, and the Eagles, I really do think they do have more Jimmys and Joes than the Chiefs do, just 1 through 53. But there's nothing anywhere on the field where they have this massive demonstrative advantage that makes me think that is an unbeatable part of the game. So it brings me to a point where the Chiefs have the number one advantage in this contest. It's the quarterback matchup against any other part of the Eagles roster. That swung me the other way. I'm going to pick the Chiefs on Friday when we make our official picks, our official keys to the game. Mm-hmm. I am going to pick the Chiefs.
And that's precisely why I've been leaning in the Chiefs direction since we knew what the matchup was going to be. He said, I don't see a blowout unfolding because you don't have, I think, for either side, that fatal flaw that would lead to the game unraveling like Super Bowl 55 kind of did. So it's going to be tight. It's going to be competitive, and it's going to go into the fourth quarter with both offenses needing to make plays to win the game. And I know which quarterback I think is going to make the play to win the game. Like I have a better feeling that it's going to be Mahomes that does that because there's only one Patrick Mahomes. And I think that any quarterback is going to suffer in comparison to Patrick Mahomes because there's only one Patrick Mahomes, and the Chiefs are blessed to be the team that employs him and has him in their huddle and has him taking their snaps and will go into the biggest game with the biggest advantage. Yes, the Eagles defense is awesome. Unholy terrors coming off the edge. Really good set of cornerbacks. They're a well-coached team. They got a super offensive line. Jalen Hurts has had an awesome year. They got a bunch of running backs they can swap in and out and play great. 2 awesome wide receivers. The Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes. Like, that's just, and it's not
all those things are cool, but they're not the golden arm.
Right. And it's not like the 52 guys around Mahomes are bums either. But so it's not as though, like, this isn't like the 80s where John Elway was carrying, 52 like Coors employees into the Super Bowl against the Washington or New York or San Francisco getting nuked off the map. This isn't that. So tight game. Who do you trust? It's 15.
Real quick, before we get to the final word, that took 2 minutes, and we made a connection. Shout out to Weston commenting in the YouTube feed. Weston, I appreciated getting to meet you last night. Thank you for introducing yourself. That was fun. That seriously made my night. Since he and his dad are longtime listeners. So we appreciate you guys. We appreciate everyone who's listening to the show, as always. With that, we do have to get to a commercial break. We're going to wrap up this show with the final word after this. edition of 580 Sports Talk with the final word. Dan, you're up first.
Congratulations to Marquise Noel of Kansas State for setting the program's single-season assist record. A very neat mark for Mr. New York City, as he calls himself on his Twitter handle. Steve Henson had the record, and he had it for a very long time, set it back in 1988. And the thing that stands out about that, of course, is that the 1988 Kansas State Wildcats were really, really good. You have to be on a good team with a bunch of guys who can score around you to set an assist record. That K-State team went to the Elite Eight. This K-State team has that kind of ceiling as well. It's a testament to Noel, his unselfishness, his growth as a player, that he's able to set this record, and he is going to put it, I think, way out of reach by the time K-State and Noel are done this season. Hats off to Marquise Noel.
Final word for me today. The Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes. The Philadelphia Eagles don't. And when it all comes down to even matchups, great players on both sides of the ball, one unit versus the other, if it's all even enough, I'm going to side with the golden arm quarterback. I'm going to take the golden boy, the future NFL MVP for this season. I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes, and I'm going to take the Kansas City Chiefs over pretty much anyone, Super Bowl or not. That does it for 580 Sports Talk on this Wednesday afternoon. We'll be back coming up tomorrow from 3 until 6 with a full guest list. Rick Peterson, CJ Moore, Mitch Holtis. Jake will join us for Crosstalk as well. Don't forget to check out the replay of the video stream today on YouTube. You can find the podcast on our website, 580wibw.com. Until tomorrow, for Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Dworzinski. You've been listening to another edition of 580 Sports Talk. We'll talk to you on Thursday.